Good evening, everybody. Later start today than I was planning. I did have to pick something up. Oh, sorry, just 1 minute here. I just have a small update that I need to run before I can jump into the game. But yeah, I had to pick up something today. I wasn't sure how long it would take. I was kind of hoping that I would be able to start sort of within that usual hour that I want to do, but clearly that didn't turn out. And then by the time I sort of knew that I'd be late, I wasn't really in a position, excuse me, to announce it on Twitter. So here we are. I'm going to take a minute here just to bring up the stream window, and then we can hop into the game. I never do like hearing my voice on the stream, but we'll get through it. Okay, let's bring it up. I did finally, after all of the mistakes of opening up the wrong game, I have finally added Book of Hours to my favorites list. Something tells me that this is only a change of label as opposed to my true feelings about the game, but there you go. Books are the memory which does not die, inscribed in 5 languages over the gate of Hush House. Go quietly. Book of Hours is a forgiving sort of game. If you're worried you might be stuck, there's usually another way. And here we go. Now, looks like there is a small update since the last time, not just when I went in myself, like in terms of the stream, or the YouTube videos, but I believe it was M3. So I'll just take a quick minute here and read from, well, let's go from Lagia. I think I might have talked about this on Friday, but patch 2024-11L1 Lagia, improved performance. Keep your eyes open for any unforeseen side effects. 2024-12M1 Morgan, Domain Reveline remains intoxicating even when you drink it straight out of a bottle that is mostly finished. Patched a weird and subtle bug that meant the Fifth Eye Curse didn't necessarily affect Fett. Probably the final update to ZH Hand's localization. Fixed broken interaction on Refectory Bellpull. Patch 2024-12M2 added Russian localization for House of Light. The Beekeeper's Ends appeared in the Curia deck despite being marked baronial, fixed in new games. And fixed cards that burnt up in a window sometimes produced a visible effect even when the window was closed. Patch 2024-12M3, it's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas. Wait for the 1st of December. Of course, we're on the 2nd of December, so actually, before I go too far into it, I've almost forgotten that there is the Advent calendar. And I don't know if Weather Factory is going to be doing the same same Advent calendar as last time, or if it will be a new one. So what do we have here? So what is this so-called Advent calendar? It's a set of small daily secret histories treats because we love Christmas. You can redeem each item every day, either in Book of Hours or in the real world. The calendar runs from the 1st to the 25th of December. What's in the Advent calendar? A mix of in-game items and little real-world treats. We'll announce what's behind every day's door at noon on our social channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and update this post with a mega list of everything released so far. With that in mind, here is the mega list. Where are we? How do I get it? Make sure that you have the latest version, 2024-12M3, or I guess M4 now, on Steam and or GOG. You'll see Christmas decorations appear throughout Hush House when in-game winter rolls around, and we'll be able to redeem any in-game gifts from Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree next to his rectory in Brandkrug Village. Please note, you can't get Advent calendar gifts during spring, summer, or autumn. You have to wait for in-game winter to appear or start in winter to receive any in-game items. When playing at 6 times speed, the longest you will have to wait is a maximum of approximately 6 minutes. What if I miss a day? Any in-game items will remain available on Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree until midnight on New Year's Eve. The Advent calendar, quote-unquote, ends on Christmas Day, but you have an extra week to collect any missed items after then. Real-world gifts are either only usable on that day or will be available in perpetuity. Check the mega list of Advent gifts below to see what they are or were. What if I hate it? You can turn off any and all seasonal art in the settings menu. Sob. Okay. So the Advent Calendar Mega List, Sunday the 1st, in-game Christmas decorations. These appear in several places in Hush House as well as across Brandkrug Village. Also, Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree appears. Monday the 2nd, in-game, something smooth as an egg and frosted like a winter window. Collect it from Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree. So I believe that particular one was the second for the Advent Calendar. Last year, so I don't know whether or not they're going to do all the same stuff as last time, or if this is just a little something to throw us off the scent. But either way, I am very much looking forward to the Advent Calendar. I liked it last year, and I encourage you, particularly for those of you who like the merch or like some of the physical goodies, maybe not physical goodies, but some of the like real world items, whether they're images, posters, whatever. I do recommend checking however you want to interact with them. Obviously, they have the social channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then there are also there is that mega list. But I usually just check. Twitter. And we are in winter, so we get to see all the goodies. Sea glass, smooth as an egg, frosted like a winter window. So here's the old rectory. Christmas lights. Mr. and Mrs. Kills. Coffins and cradles, midwife and handywoman. The sweet bones. The post office. Even Denzel's in the mood. Let's see what else we can find, because I know... yeah, I was going to say, it looks like I've decorated the bridge. So... a nice wreath. I actually didn't notice the wreath in the first room. I would be amused if... maybe if you put something like a mistletoe over the... dummy. Now, I don't remember if this was in here last time, but I quite like the streamers for the guests, or servants' hall. Definitely remember these. At least I'm hoping those were there last time. Otherwise, I definitely don't remember those. We also haven't fully unlocked the house yet, so I don't think there would be Christmas decorations in the other areas, but you never know. Oh, even Christmas lights at the top of the tower. The streamers really are very vibrant. I can't remember if they were here. I'm guessing they were. Like, I can't imagine that they added too much in terms of art, because it looked so nice in Christmas last time, but... excuse me. It has also been a year. Alright, so, it was fun to review all of these things, but we are here for the game. So, we had the lively salon. Now, one thing I'll just comment on, I think I've maybe talked about this before, but I have a feeling here that I'm sort of stuck on an old version of behind the scenes, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to like, the thing that would be best is if I had some way of running this event so that I could sort of get the new entries. The problem is that I imagine this is a one-use sort of thing. So either way, we'll learn to live with it. But I'll see if I can. I'll see if there's a way for me to sort of sort out the small disconnect in terms of the version I'm playing versus the version I started with. Now, let's take some stock in terms of where the timers and such are. I can't remember. Yeah, okay, so I do still need to unpause. So we are leveling up Edicts Inviolable. Oh yes, we actually have quite a few lessons to take care of. I'm still speaking... Why am I speaking with Reverend Timothy? Oh, probably because of the knock. So we're at 14 knock, which I believe was going to be... Oh! What's going on here? So collaboration, beverage, memory... I don't think there's a knock tool, so obviously I've done... Oh, hang on, I remember now. We were going to give him the candle, which we're making right now. Okay, so yes, we're working on opening up the impermeable cell. I imagine I should probably take a look at my notes here in terms of figuring out the next steps, but... It's a little difficult to read now just because I've erased so much, but... Okay, Reverend Timothy gets the candle, level up Edicts Inviolable, read texts and level, use the many-faceted lesson, and prepare the next salon. Sounds right. And then I made some notes here that we're going to read the Chandler's Wish, the 26 enticements, deaths and their evasions, door and wall. Very descriptive of me. And the secret colors. So obviously there's a little bit of adjustment that I need to make in terms of those instructions. The only other thing I can think of right now is, so we have the Edicts Inviolable right now. But clearly if I want to take Edicts Inviolable up to another level, it'll be level 7, so I should get the other 7 memories, and I should get those sooner rather than later. So, am I already reading books? Doesn't look like I am. So for Edicts Inviolable, we need Heart and Moon. What I'm going to do here is focus on the ones that Reverend Timothy can't get me. So, we've got Beguiling Melodies, so that obviously helps us with the heart. We've got Stolen Secrets, but that theoretically is something Reverend Timothy could give me. I've got some leftover whist. Was I not reading Julian Cosley's work? Doesn't look like it, but okay. Oh, hang on. Why do I think that Beguiling Melodies will help? That's Grail and Sky. That's not going to help me at all. It's Peruvian Diaries that I want. Secret Thresholds doesn't help me out. We will move up here so we can use the FET at the desk. So Confounding Parables here. I think we might be... I'm going to say we're at 108. I could be wrong on that, but... Okay. I'm a little reluctant to give up the Faust here, so we'll use the Whist. Now the Whist... We don't have any use of Revelations. Patterns doesn't help us. Hindsight... Salt should help, though. I'm going to do the See Does Not Regret on this one. I think I may have read it before, but I'm not quite on the ball in terms of figuring out what I have and haven't read yet. Okay, this should be Satisfaction. Regrets, we don't worry too much about. Gossip doesn't help. Foresight, nope. Contradictions will help, though. So I don't recall if I've done... I think I did do the Ascendant, so I will go through the hardship of those indignities perpetrated by this deceitful fraternity of obliviots. Fears, no... I'll put it plural even though there is only one book on there. We've already got the Earth Sign, Storms we may get from Reverend Timothy, Savage Hymns don't help us for Edicts Inviolable, Impulses won't help us either. And Intuitions in theory would help us, but that is something that Reverend Timothy might potentially get me. So we will wait out the afternoon for that. There is one other thing that I should check, though. So we've got 3, 4. Okay, let me just double check that. So doesn't help. This does. So 1. Confounding Parable is 2. Salt is 3. Contradiction is 4. I need 3 more. So for sake of the argument, Solace Storm and Stolen Secret will cover us. Or, Intuition or whatever. Okay, I am satisfied that we're going to be able to get through the Edicts Inviolable. Now, theoretically, this is the time I should maybe be considering, making a bunch of food and all of that. But right now, I'm happy to. Oh, that's interesting. Is that my? Ah, there we go. The only thing is that I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to be doing the... Oh, that's a nice one. Zerogdree, how are you doing tonight? I always like your... I know I keep saying this, but I do always like your emotes. I think that's the first time I've seen static ones coming in, but they are very, very charming. I do also like how the ooze are sort of on their own... line, so you can extend the boost if you want. I don't listen to everything Reverend Timothy says. He doesn't even really expect me to, but I'm often glad when I do. Okay. The skill is now level 7. Its power aspects have also increased. One other thing I'm just going to take a quick peek at here. I'm a little surprised that Edicts Inviolable is at... Yeah. Okay, this is slightly concerning. Because I wanted Edicts Inviolable at 9, but I do have the secret colors listed here, so we'll probably be fine. Up next, make a moth orchid scented candle, a scent like evening. Moth orchid scented candle, a candle scented with moth orchid. I don't need a long-term place for this, but I do need to put the candle in at least one place. There we go. So we'll hand that off to Reverend Timothy when the opportunity comes up. I'm going to take a minute here just because we know we don't need the consider verb right away. I'm going to open up the abandoned luggage. Add a soul card. Long past the help of any lost and found. Crack open the container. Delight in your discovery. And I should maybe do a quick patrol around the house to make sure that I'm not missing any other packages. The better option here would be to hold over the cache. So just looking for anything blinking on this screen. I think we did a good job. Oh, there we go. So it looks like they're all in the sagging dock, which is where they should be, but obviously I've been tossing so much stuff on the bridge that all right, we're in good shape. Not animated, but it felt right. Have a bonus one. Very nice. I don't know. I've gotten they're very endearing, so I've kind of gotten a little accustomed to whenever you stop by, just getting to see one. So it's obviously my job is to be the one doing whatever approximates for entertainment around these parts. But it is just something that puts a smile on my face each time I see it. So, all right. So yeah, we're just gonna let things run by for now. Clearly, if I need, I've got the extra opportunities for opening up more containers. Actually, I don't think Oswin's here, so I'm just going to do a quick audit of a few of the different rooms. So this one, I believe we got the scroll from. Yep. And then... Oh, actually, that one might have had the Sun's design. And then this would have been the one with the... do I have the open head? Yeah. Okay, what were the other ones that I was working on? We've definitely got the root rock. Or serpent root, rather. And then we have Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, both volumes. And then we've also got the 3 and the 3. So there are other Newman texts. Yes. So this isn't anything special for me, by the way. So if any of you have Book of Hours and you've been playing, as of December 1st, the game turns on the Christmas decorations. On the chance that you have reached winter and you don't see these decorations, what you may want to do, I think it might be under more. Yeah, disable seasonal content. That would be a terrible thing if you did that, though. Although I am slightly curious, if you put it off to the side like this. Yeah. Just open it to see the festivities. So there is, I'll just paste this again. Oop. We gotta get this copied. So that's the master list. Last year when they did the Advent calendar, there was both in like real world and virtual gifts. So the virtual gifts are at the tree by the rectory, Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree. So today's was sea glass, but all of the items when winter comes around will be on the tree here. And the Advent calendar runs up to the 25th, but the seasonal content will be in the game until the new year. I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, if you want, you can actually just change your system clock to Christmas, and it will put up the seasonal decorations for you as well. I imagine the Advent calendar works similarly, but with that in mind, if you want to participate as intended in the game, just checking back to that site every couple of days just to make sure. Well, theoretically every day, depending how committed you are. But checking back in is a nice way to make sure that if there's any of the different gifts or different items, you don't miss out on the time limited stuff. If you could just give me a quick second, I heard a big thump. I think that was outside, but I did have something somewhat precariously placed, so I apologize. I'm going to step away from the keys for a little bit just to make sure that nothing Nothing precious is destroyed. Alright, sorry about that. Everything is okay, or at the very least, I haven't noticed the disaster that has occurred. But yeah, so if you do want, I do recall at least one day in the previous year's advent calendar, they did a discount on the Etsy store. And I think that was a one-day affair, so again, for those of you that have a particular interest in the physical merch, I don't know if I would put off like a Christmas purchase for that, because obviously it's already quite close to Christmas, and for me, in Canada, we've got a fairly long-standing postal strike now, so I'm kind of doubtful that anything that ships during the normal post is going to make it for Christmas at all. But not everybody's based in Canada, so I think most of you will be fine. But yeah, again, I think these are nice things. They're hopefully not things that people will kick up a fuss over. I definitely enjoyed following the Advent calendar. But obviously, if it becomes the sort of thing that stresses people out, don't let it stress you out. Okay. Back to the task at hand. So the other thing I forgot to mention is we do have the lower level pumps. The machine roars to life, sparks flicker. This will take a while. So in 2 minutes, we'll be able to open the submerged sea caves. And in 22 seconds, we'll be able to give Reverend Timothy the moth orchid scented candle. Reverend Timothy is always, always happy to chat. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers through the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. And let's go open up the list again. The Morphe Codex. A priestess of the Sisterhood of the Knot claims to have discerned the true meaning of the Thunderskin's birth. The writer credits the Red Grail, the Ring-Yew, and the Horned Axe, the powers the Sisterhood reveres, with agreeing a final treaty between the Hours of the House and the Hours they displaced. The Thunderskin loved the Yew, and the Grail destroyed him, as restitution for the slaying of the Horned Axe's sisters and brothers. The Thunderskin entered the Mansus through the Peacock Door, a privilege never given to the Witch and Sister, but then their merit was much less. The writer admits that entry through the Peacock Door is unseemly, but insists that under the circumstances there was no other way. Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Lopoli left Strathcoyn's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyn. For 4 years, since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Lopoli served as Strathcoyn's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good, certainly he agrees. But I've never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear this dream of eyes. We have agreed to part, almost amicably." Lopoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of his journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of Old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. So probably put the Beguiling Melody beside the Regret, just so I don't get confused as to what I have access to. 108. Ava de Wolf discourses on the fifth history, and particularly on those who are said to have passed over from it, the Great Hooded Princes, the Knocklong who ascended under the Mother of Ants, but now, so Ava claims, honor the Horned Axe. The Great Hooded Princes call their library the Tomb of Lies, and this has given rise to a foolish tradition that the princes are habitual liars. Of course, in fact, truth flourishes when lies are slain. On the other hand, the princes do not say knowledge is power, but rather power is knowledge. Ava has, to her regret, never visited the library. She notes that it is said to be west of the Lion and north of Victory, and suggests that, though the princes are generally associated with India, their library might be farther east. Alright, so the founding parable is on the list. Ah! Those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of Obliviates. It's not clear whether CROD, who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote in the 16th century after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. 58. That they did claim inheritance of the traditions of the House of Leith, but that they have disregarded both its most sacred and its most beautiful ceremonies where they are not found convenient. 59. 71. The Glassfinger toxin is no mere assassin's convenience for the idiots to confine to the disposal of their enemies. It has higher uses. Certainly it is a great matter of winter, but I have already outlined the technique by which it may be fitted for its ultimate destiny, which was the grape juice that we gave Reverend Timothy, also known as the Sacrament Assay. The sea does not regret. Eason Fekri, one-time Secretary Salvant of the Curia of the Isle, responsible for the Curia's healing efforts, writes of his experiences in Brankrug and hints at his travels elsewhere. The sea does not regret the tide, Fekri writes, for when the tide has passed, it leaves its traces on the sand, which traces are the sea's memory. Fekri is a keen fisherman and speaks glowingly of the fish suppers of Brankrug. He also admits that his enthusiasm for the bounty of the sea has altered him, that before he came to Brankrug he consumed only those things found in the earth. I was the greater thereby, but all of us give up what we were to become what we are. So as we said, that was the 4 that we could get that we knew Reverend Timothy wouldn't give us through other means. We're still waiting for 3 from either conversations with Reverend Timothy or other means. Move gingerly while the pain lasts. So most likely I'm going to need to read some books for this, but I'm going to talk to Reverend Timothy about the candle first, and then we will... I did kind of mess up the knock material. I don't really need to listen to everything Reverend Timothy says. He doesn't really even expect me to, but I'm often glad when I do. And again, just to be clear in terms of what's happening here, so Reverend Timothy has kind of a special interaction here. So Reverend Timothy is always, always happy to chat, add an element of the soul to enhance Reverend Timothy's effectiveness for the day, or just talk. Unlike some assistants, Timothy can make use of candles. So as always, if you ever want to know what an empty slot can contain, just click on it. So we've done the element of the soul. We've also fed him a beverage. So that was the Sacrament Assay, the 6 knock drink. We can give him a memory, which I believe we did. I just don't remember what memory I gave him. The candle. So this is the unique one to Reverend Timothy. Sustenance and a tool. And in this case here, for one reason or another, the candle seemed preferable to the other alternatives. I actually don't think we have that many knock foods. Usually the knock foods that we can make are the ones that, I could give cuckoo honey, but that seems like a fairly costly thing to give up. So yeah, in this case here, just handing off the candle. It'll overdo it in terms of the knock, but this stuff has already sort of been paid for, so. A light for dark places. I can offer my assistant a candle. This will increase their aspects. They'll also keep any candle stumps that might be left over. Now, I'll just mention here briefly, in terms of the interaction with Reverend Timothy, this is, actually I think it's specifically candles that he wants. so I don't think it'll work here. But there is a renewable light in the game. If you use the hurricane lamp, doesn't count as a candle, but it does count as a light. So if you want to make some of the items that require light as an ingredient, this will help you out. Okay, so we wait 30 seconds. And then again, we'll probably be able to get one chat, or no, actually won't even get one chat in with Reverend Timothy before we need to read the books. So knowing that, perhaps it's time for me to get the last items. So I'll read the Gospel of Zacchaeus. Let's do Concursum Diaries. And those who do not sleep. Ooh, Lignum Vitae Blanc. Or possibly blank. Actually, let me figure out the proper pronunciation for that. And sorry, Bonkles, I didn't see your message until now. Just give me a quick second here, and I will catch up. Yes, I think it's just pronounced the same as like the usual blank, like blank space and such. Problem is I don't have my usual, like when I can, I try to rely on I try to rely on one source for pronunciation, and that it didn't have it, at least in the sense that I was looking for. Like, so, in this case here, like the blank being referred to, as far as I can tell, is the idea of unfinished material. So it's not unique to wood. But I don't actually have that sense in that resource I was consulting. All right, I'm slightly mad that we didn't have room for that, but let's see if I can make this work. As much as I like making the faces. This one's actually pretty good for getting this one's pretty good for getting the Pyrus Auriculacinus. So, Bonkel says, who do you think are the best visitors to invite for Christmas dinner? I forgot I created a large feast a while back for a holiday salon. I mean, they're all appropriate. Who would be the most fun? Who would be? I mean, the question would be, do you want to invite the people you want to be around with? Do you want to make the most thematically appropriate? Do you want to invite the people who might be lonely on Christmas? That's what I would do. So let's take a look at my journal and see some of the people. So I don't know if Eason has anybody who would invite him over. So he seems like a good one. I think there's a Mrs. Moore. So as nice as it would be to invite Douglas Moore, I think probably he's good for Christmas. The Kills would be nice to invite as well. They always seem so excited whenever you bring them over. Denzel also probably doesn't have a lot of people for Christmas, but I guess you can only really invite one villager. I really like the idea of inviting Reverend Timothy, but I guess the housekeeper is there to keep him company. I also just like the idea of having all right, so I think Denzel for sure. I mean, if you have... One of the problems I'm running into is there's lots of booze around the house, which I haven't been using. So, I figure a divorcee at Christmas is a good chance to get rid of some of the alcohol. So Coquille is obviously an option there. So let's say Denzel and Eason. I can't invite Connie anymore. But I'm trying to think. It wouldn't be bad to invite Fraser, but I kind of feel that he wouldn't have trouble getting a Christmas invitation. So I don't know, maybe like Eason, Connie, Zachary Wakefield, Denzel. And we could maybe round it out with Peter Icdistis. Or alternatively, Hokebald. But I don't think people are going to be satisfied with that group. I have different priorities for my Christmas. I don't know. Maybe I should turn it around. Who are you thinking of inviting for Christmas? But I think, like, for me, this is actually probably just a Christmas thing for myself. So I talked about this before. My plan is definitely to stream for Christmas. And one of the big reasons for this is that I've never felt... so like birthdays and Christmas and stuff like that, I do like a stream for those, but I don't feel a particular need or obligation to do them. And like, I don't really, go to family or anything like that for those holidays, but I've also never felt that I'm worse off for it. It's just kind of the way that I'm wired. So, but one thing that I really appreciated, I know I've told this story before, but it's worth kind of just giving a little bit of a framing for this. One thing I really appreciated in Vancouver is that I had some friends, and I mean, these were they're a couple now, but like one of them was a friend that I had back when like she was a shift supervisor at a Starbucks that we both worked at, and she, like, something always seemed to go wrong whenever we were working together. But, you know, you do the best that you can and you get through it. And she's the shift supervisor, so that usually means I'm going to be sort of running around trying to get the alternatives to work. So when it came... But yeah, basically, she's kind of aware of the fact that I really didn't have any family in town. And so I don't even remember when it started, but they invited me over for Christmas. And, you know, just a really nice parents, definitely felt very welcome. And it's something that I really appreciated, right? So it's one of these things where I'm not going to be a Grinch. I'm not going to pretend that it's not nice to have, you know, to be with some friends for Christmas. And I just thought that that was a really nice thing for them to do because, you know, I certainly felt like family, but of course I'm not. You know, they brought me in for something that was certainly not expected of them or ever would be expected of them. And so because that felt very nice and because, you know, I never want to specifically draw people out on it, but there are definitely a few people who watch who don't necessarily have anywhere to go or anybody to sort of spend the Christmas with. I can't obviously change the state of the world for people, but I figured at the very least, insofar as the stream provides a nice little bit of distraction, whether that is something to just sort of watch passively, and, you know, everybody's sort of done with their family time, and then, you know, we're just just hanging out, or if it's for something, you know, if it is just, you know, that's something that you want to spend Christmas on. It's not a very big lift for me. Don't really have any other Christmas plans, so again, I usually try where I can to get the some kind of a Christmas stream going, just so that, you know, if nothing else, people just have a friendly voice to listen to. But yeah, with that in mind, it also has sort of shaped my idea in terms of Christmas when I can. If I do get the opportunity, it's nice to be able to say, you know, hey, you know, if you're not doing anything, come on over. And that does translate into the guest list as well. Should have opened another container. I'll still do it. It's just a little late for me to follow up on that. All right, let's open the creative supplies first. Something set helpfully aside. Crack open the container. Delight in your discovery. Oswin, lovely to see you. How are you doing tonight? Now, I'm trying to remember, I don't think I actually saw a chat message so we started reading Julian Closeley's masterwork. Did you get a chance to actually hear the text on that? Because I don't yet have a Newman for today, or in my inventory right now, and I'd be happy to expose you to another. You don't think so? All right. And I think, if I recall from last stream, you said you were interested in seeing the contents of Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, right? Unless I dozed off. No, okay, cool. I only asked just because it is something that you theoretically can find on your own playthrough, but yeah, we're gonna give you some extra Cosley here. So, written in Eric-Pean, a language of surpassing beauty and elusiveness revealed through the ecstatic apprehensions of the Orphics, the Eleusinians, and the Sibyls of the Rhine. Eric-Pean, these mystics claim, allows for the elaboration of hues, sensations, and states of mind too subtle for grosser tongues. Every candle has its shadow. This has improved their aspects appropriately. Reverend Timothy is always, always happy to chat. 'Cause, 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 Alright, so that's the Git reading in a minute, but we've already got the results that we wanted. The one bit of context I can't provide here was the reason why we started going through this was the Moon Footstool, where it was Solomon Husher, I believe, who put a stain on this after finding out that Julian Cosley had written to apologize. Okay. The Gospel of Zacchaeus, an extremely heterodox account of the Nazarene Messiah and his works, describing his ascension to the mansus through the opening of his body. 7 were the wounds of his body, and 7 the doors of the house, 7 the lesser aspects of the hours, and knock the aspect above all, for the mother of ants is the mother of salvation. The book includes a description of a rite which can be used to raise a corpse to half-life, in memory of he who bled for the wood, but the marginalia claim that the mother of ants no longer permits the use of this rite. So we have a stolen secret. Next up, the Concursum Diaries, the diaries of the explorer and murderer Lars Westergren. He's unhelpfully translated them into Frisian for privacy. There are map legends, there are maps of legends, and there are legends of maps. Aspects of the mansus subsist in all of these, in much the same way that you find water in a swamp and in a cup and in the sky. Westergren describes a series of expeditions into the mansus. He focuses on the details of the experience, the colors, the vistas, the textures, rather than the practicalities. He does warn that the mansus changes each year, though he assures the reader that the doors have been the same. Doors may close, but they never disappear, at least not while there have been mortals in the mansus. We're like mice. Those Who Do Not Sleep. The mystic Broadnax discusses the origins of the Sister Witch and of the Thunderskin. Can't imagine if Oswin would like this one. The Sister and Witch were born in 2 wombs, one poor, one rich, across the sea. The sister was stronger in the aspect of heart, and so their survival was assured. The witch was stronger in the aspect of grail, and so they were not satisfied. When the Sister and Witch came west, the Red Grail permitted their ascension, but then grew jealous of their power. It lured a great musician into the ranks of its names and caused them to be reborn from blood as a heart hour, so that the Grail might maintain dominion there also, but its victory is not assured. And there's a storm for our trouble. So in 10 seconds, we'll be able to level up Edict's Inviolable. I'll just double check that we've got what we need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. I don't need to listen to everything Reverend Timothy says. He doesn't really even expect me to, but I'm often glad when I do. So I think we're at the point I can probably just get him to open the room here. So the impermeable cell. A sign outside the cell reads, "Warning, not to be spoken with nor looked upon." The protections that still hang in the air lend force to the injunction. And a bolt of moss green velvet, suitable for a ball gown or a jewel's cushion. How do I want to work this? So I think we need to move the pickled mushrooms. And I'd rather not put them on the bridge if I can avoid it. Almost. There we go. All right, let's level this up. So, Cheerful Ditty, Confounding Parable, Contradiction, Salt, Stolen Secret, Intuition, and a Storm. We'll add the core. At last I approach mastery. And we still need one more before we can get that to the level that I wanted, but what we're really going to focus on right now is the book. Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, or The House of Glass, Julian Cosley considered this his masterwork. Techniques for the perception and analysis which permit invidious and apocalyptic conclusions. Probably the most assiduously suppressed book in history, the entire run was destroyed. Even the presses were melted and dispersed, but the manuscript edition has survived. The perfect hegemony of the hours is perhaps eternal, but Cosley proposes and describes confinement inescapable, aesthetic and optical techniques which might contain even an hour, profoundly disrupting the order of the Mansis. He presents this as his own work, but there are hints here and there that he received inspiration or even assistance from the nowhere hour named Snow. And the resulting memory, 5 knock, 5 scale, 5 winter, inescapable confinement. Everything ultimately comes down to a choice between eternity and history. There's only one place where you're safe from both, and it's not a place anyone would want to be. It's a prison that can only exist in certain histories. Any librarian can use this to establish a history and complete the game, but the prodigal and the archaeologist can win a particular victory. Now, what I will share with you, Oswin, and I'm going to let you choose how far you want. Actually, I'm just going to make a quick note of something here. So we've now seen the inescapable confinement. But the real question is, do you want to know why there is a second edition of Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic and what the contents might be? As for the rest of you, although Oswin is welcome to listen to this too, it just doesn't happen to be something that she can action on it. The existence of the second one is actually not obvious either, but I'm mostly just giving you the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the game if you want, but you're obviously welcome to do this on your own time. So one of the reasons why I'm taking the time with Oswin is that Oswin Meow is actually one of the streamers who I really like watching Book of Hours with. And one of the reasons for this is that I think one of the really rewarding parts about watching Oswin's Book of Hours streams is that while she'll feel a certain degree of self-consciousness in terms of, taking the time to read the books, I really enjoy the fact that I have seen streams which are entirely about reading the texts and not just passively reading them, but actually taking the time to sort of study the books, study the context in which they're presented, what the books have and why they might have a certain memory over another one. It's really, really interesting to see someone who is encountering this game for the first time go through the game so carefully and, to see the thought process at work. Oswin's a scientist in real life, so I don't know if this informs the approach or this just happens to be a personality thing, because I don't know, I feel a certain common cause in terms of what I find interesting about the game and and the approach that I take. But I would say there's definitely been a few streams that I've watched in terms of Book of Hours material, but Oswin is one of my favorite Book of Hours streamers to watch, although I will confess that I don't watch a lot of Book of Hours streams, so that's kind of faint praise. But I think Oswin's approach to the game is a really... I like watching it a lot. It's something that I get a lot out of. It's neat to see somebody engage with the game in this way, and specifically to see the thoughts being formed as they come by. And I don't know, it's also just kind of a chance for me to relive what it was like to play the game for the first time as well. I really do think her stream really captures that feeling, and so I enjoy it a lot for that, but I certainly don't want to imply that Oswin is just a one-note streamer. There's actually a lot of games that I've seen that I've really enjoyed. They've sometimes either inspired me to play the game myself, they've sometimes given me a reason to go back and enjoy certain things, and sometimes I just enjoy kicking back and watching. And some highlights have definitely been Disco Elysium and Helldivers 2. I actually did wind up picking up the first Helldivers off of the streams, although obviously the sequel is quite a different game. But definitely Oswin Meow is somebody I'm always very always very happy to have inside of chat, but also somebody who I really enjoy watching as a broadcaster, and I hope you all enjoy the stream as much as I do. It also just happens to be that Oswin's really nice to have in the channel because it gives me an excuse to finally read some of my Newman texts. Alright, the pubs sputter and die, but they've done their work. Uncovered depths. Once more, the sea is withdrawn from the caves of the Isle. So I believe we can still only unlock one room at once, so we'll wait till Reverend Timothy finishes his job here. Hello, Wanderer Down. Oswin's actually far better at that than I am. So there is a worthwhile question about which of these memories do I want to keep overnight. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers through the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. And the skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. So I'm going to take some time to move all these around. We'll move transformations and liberations. Again, Edicts Inviolable is something that's intended to be level 9, so I'll move this up a little bit. I'm going to wait for the next day before we read Cosley's next work. Oh, sorry, I said I was going to check. Oh yeah, so I get to take something overnight. So the Chandler's Wish is Purifications and Exaltations, which would be Lantern and Sky. We don't have any of those here. Leaves and Thorns would be Grail and... You know, the Beguiling Melody probably makes the most sense here because it's something that one of the villagers won't be able to generate for me, so... Now that night has fallen, I can rest and perhaps dream on the day's doings. Dreaming on a memory will preserve it past dawn, allowing you to keep it until the following day. If Santa was long, possibly a name, what aspect? Everybody's got Christmas questions now. Actually, Bonkles did have one that I'm curious about what other people's feelings were, but I'm interested in knowing what guests you would have over for Christmas dinner in the game and its salons. Santa was long, possibly a name. What aspects would he embody? I mean, so the winter seems kind of obvious, although I wouldn't associate, you know, Santa with silence and endings. I definitely feel Santa is Grail. I think that goes without saying. I don't know if Core would really be something I associate, or not Core. I don't know if Heart is something I would necessarily associate with jolliness, but certainly Core seems to indicate that. So. You were going to say he's Lantern. Interesting. So what is it about Santa Claus that implies the principle of the secret place, sometimes called the House of the Sun and the light above it? Yeah, sorry, I keep screwing this up. So if we're talking about elements of the soul, then definitely Santa is a big core guy. If we're talking about aspects, I would actually say Grail, as weird as it sounds, right? But if we read the description, the principle of Grail honors both the birth and the feast, hunger, lust, the drowning waters. I mean, the guy always drinks milk and cookies, right? And he's, giving gifts, satisfying wants. Oh, interesting. Eason and Timothy were your go-to picks. You just like Timothy's Christmas tree. Fair enough. Actually, you know what? Here's what we're gonna do. Let us consult. When we are proper scholars here, right? So, I think everybody knows the origin of. I think everybody kind of knows the origin of Santa as we know it, right? Like the red and white. So what I think we should do here, this will be a group project. We're going to, oh, hang on. Let me just double check I'm not. All right. A visit from St. Nicholas. So what we're going to do is let's analyze a canonical account of Santa Claus before we make some aspect determinations. So a visit from St. And so the reason why I bring this up is that the description of this is different from the description that we get from the Coca-Cola Santa. A visit from St. Nicholas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave a lustre of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment he must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. Oh, Forge aspect. Yeah, Forge. Hey, there we go. The workshop man. We're definitely dealing with an edge in Forge along here. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held high in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf. Okay, that's definitely Grail-Long right there. And I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. And a wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. Definitely not a Grail-Long. He spoke not a word. There's the winter, but I don't think the rest of this has been wintered, so. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." So I am inclined to say we're dealing with a Grail Forge combination here. But does anybody else have any thoughts along these lines? Because I know some people are a little more comfortable with the lore than I am. I think the Flower Maker, if I'm not mistaken, is Grail and Lantern. I'm trying to think if there's any Grail and Forge, though. Yeah, it's just, so obviously the only thing that I would say about the silence for, like, the winter seems like it's an obvious one for Saint Nick, but the thing is that the only silence is when he's actually inside the house. I wouldn't normally associate him with sort of silence and endings. So I would definitely feel him to be, I would definitely sort of feel him to be, like, again, just the, there arose such a clatter. He sort of shouts "Merry Christmas to all a good night." Like, I definitely don't associate him with what is traditionally associated with winter in this game. But yeah, I would say definitely the Elf's Workshop. I would definitely be inclined to say we're dealing with a Forge entity here. And I definitely feel Grail, but I can maybe accept some others. But I'm interested to see people going for Rose. I don't actually know how the powers fit with the hours in this game. So, like, for instance, I just think the Watchman would be associated with Lantern. I don't know if any of the other powers are associated with the hours or not, but. Also, plus, I mean, let's be honest here. Secret Histories isn't a real principle, so Rose isn't a real principle. Christmas is past the winter solstice, so it's moving away from winter. Okay, that's a good point, actually. And Wanderer Down also shared, for the dinner party, you would invite Douglas Moore, the Friar, Yvette. When you say the Friar, you mean Reverend Timothy? Yvette and the Kills. Nice. I definitely said I like the idea of inviting the Kills because they're so excited to come in. But I was actually going to say, if we had to go by Salon rules, which means you can only invite one, you can only invite one villager, I actually would pick Denzel because it's not obvious to me that he has anyone to spend Christmas with. So I was going to. I built my salon around people who wouldn't otherwise have a Christmas dinner to go to, so I think I went for, let's do this again. So Denzel is, I think, so what? Denzel, Eason, maybe Ignistus, Hokabald, Zachary. I know that's different from what I said last time. I also think I said I probably shouldn't tell this story, actually. Yeah, I don't know. That was my inclination behind it. I know most people would be like, well, why would you let Hokabald ruin Christmas? But you know what? Bob Cratchit let Scrooge come in on Christmas Day, so. Okay, that was a fun digression for me, at least. But I think we are ready to unpause because I did. Well, Well, I only said I would invite Coquille because of I've got too much booze set aside, so I kind of feel that if I wanted to like just generally free up the shelf space, inviting a divorcee at Christmas is like the best option. Memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. All right. So let's think about the day's plans. Oh, sorry. You know, we did the visit from St. Nicholas. Oh, you like moon or moth? Oh, I wasn't thinking about moth. The mythos of coming of age story. He's a thing in dreams of secrets which are lost when you look too hard, but picked up again. I could definitely be convinced of moth. But I apologize. We did the visit from St. Nicholas, but I didn't actually read the contents of the room here. So the worm-inhabited cell. The occupant of this cell could not be allowed fresh air and exercise. It would not have been reasonably expected to leave this cell ever again, even while it wore human shape. But it could not be confined forever. In the end, somehow, it found its way into the walls. So here we have desiccated witchworms, nasty little things, but almost safe when they're this dead. Whispering sand, white silver sand in which the voice of the waves lingers. Stargall ink, an ink traditionally but only rarely made with meteoric iron, a minor ink of power. And the midnight mark, a blemish left on a page or a skin by a careful incision or a judicious sting to preserve a little of the power of night. Submerged sea caves. The sea has claimed these caves. The tide thunders below. I'll need to find some way to lower the water level before I can enter. I've been a little careful not to draw too much attention to certain things in the Cucurbit, Oswin, because there's definitely a couple of reveals that I definitely want to preserve for you. So the reason why I talk about the Julian Cosley stuff and things like that is because I know you're kind of interested in him, and I know you're probably going to want to understand where you find those. Like, what I'm giving you just enough breadcrumbs to sort of follow this when you do pick it up. But there's a couple of details that you find out inside the Cucurbit where that's one of the really big, like, ooh, you know, I'm learning some of these big things that the game had been setting up earlier, and I've deliberately been avoiding going into those. But yeah, there's some stuff in there which is wild and interesting, and I can't wait for you to see them. All right, so we'll open up the Uncovered Depths. That's going to take a minute. In the meantime, I think I did say that I was going to work on one of the books. So I think I was going to read the 26 Enticements. Where did I put it? So that's a 14. So I'm also interested to see if I can actually pull it off. I may need some help. It's like Tridesma Hire is my best grail. Okay, so we're looking for 14 here. I have an easy option in terms of getting the Grail, but it does mean that I'm going to need... We're not limited just to shrines, though, Wanderer Down. You do also have lessons that you can use to level that stuff up as well. I think that was a fairly early change they made to the game. Okay. I have an easy way of turning this into like an assured win. Yeah, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read a scroll. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. And... sorry, I didn't really think through the plan for today. I might just bring Mr. Kill back in. I forgot. I saved the Beguiling Melody at the loss of the Many-Faceted Lesson. So I was hanging on to that for so long and completely forgot that I was trying to hang on to the Many-Faceted Lesson. All right. Them's the breaks. Help with letters. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There's no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. And we'll talk with Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill always enjoys a chance to catch up with me. Ooh, foggy day. Mr. Kill can always spare a few hours to help a friend. Tamer of trees, a worker of woods, a consigner of cadavers. He's also been known to try his hand very diffidently at poetry. So just for the sake of, like, I don't really know what's, what I'm going to have down below here. I definitely haven't remembered all the challenges of the room. So I'm going to just add the inescapable confinement to Mr. Kill just because I know I'm going to lose this no matter what. So I can discuss a memory with my assistant. And I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. This will complete once dawn has come. So again, I'm feeling like a bit of a bonehead for not remembering to keep the Many-Faceted Lesson, but I'm not going to throw up too big of a fuss about it. It was a nice to have, and obviously I'm pretty comfortable with where most of my skills will be going. Oh, actually, one other thing I'll do to... okay, this is going to be a little bit of a weird sequence of events, but I'm going to try the Grand Reading Armchair. This is purely for entertainment. Investigate the object. You won't use this up or consume it by doing this. And let's just take the time to read the promised... Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, 2nd edition, or The Refinements of Light. Julian Cosley had never wanted or expected to write a 2nd edition of his masterwork. This book houses a Newman, a truth so powerful it can perhaps believe itself. So here's the second half of the Cosley revelations for you. Memories don't last long outside books, but it's made the difference for the day. Mr. Kill, Ryan Spry doesn't mind stopping for a gossip. So I suppose I should be looking at what I want to level up with that skill. So it was Leaves and Thorns, so I'm going to need 7 Grail and Nectar. I can actually start reading the books for those, and probably should have at the start. So as always, we're just going to go... So Beguiling Melodies we already have. Stolen Secret at a great cost. Secret Thresholds don't help. Chiefful Ditties, no, not Stolen Secrets. No Bittersweet Certainties. Confounding Parables, I keep getting this one wrong. Revelations, no. Patterns, no. No Hindsight, no Salt. Satisfaction we can potentially get from Mr. Kill. No Regrets. Gossip we can potentially get from Mr. Kill. Foresight doesn't help. Contradictions don't help. No for Fears. Earth Signs we already have. Storms don't help. Savage Hymns don't help. Impulse we can get from Mr. Kill. And Intuition we could get from Mr. Kill, and it wouldn't help. I suspect this is going to be a bit of a challenge. But at least the Watchful Potted Plant will help me out. Alright, now we can see what we're up against. So, first of all, the Sea Caves. The Curia's last secret, right under Governor Collar's nose. Levinson, Blackwood, and Van Loren all continued their careful investigations of the Brandkrug Sea Caves. Many of the species here are unknown to Cornwall. Some have not been seen anywhere under this sun. And yes, this is the... I hope you get a chance to open up the game before the end of the month, Oswin, because this is available to everyone. There's an advent... Actually, it's maybe not a bad time to remind people that there is an advent calendar. This will have both in-game but also real-world rewards. So sometimes these will be things like desktop wallpapers, but there were also some discounts on the Etsy store. But you will, as the season goes by, there will be items that show up on Reverend Timothy's Christmas tree. So right now we have the sea glass, but this will get a few items on it. And yeah, Weather Factory are Christmas fans, which of course makes me a Weather Factory fan. But yeah, as winter goes by, everything that has come up on the advent calendar will appear on the tree. So, you know, you don't have to like log in and get winter on December 2nd to get the December 2nd item. You know, as long as there'll be new stuff will stop being added on the 25th. And you'll have until the end of the month to interact with and collect everything. And I mean, if you miss it for the entire month, it's a nice thing to celebrate Christmas. Obviously, it's not the end of the world if you don't get to experience it. But if we want, we can explore the sea caves. And we have the menacing phosphorescence. The pumps have drained enough water to splash through, but everything is spatched and splotted with sickly, alien, wondrous, mesmeric light. When I retreat, I find the same glow on my boots. Whatever I do, I should not do it hastily. So either 14 moon or 14 nectar. Clearly with Mr. Kill, we will not get that. Although I could probably talk to the fisherman to open this up. All right, the Grand Reading Armchair, nestle grandly. Once a favored chair of the Treasurer of the Curia, an office that Fraser Strathcoyne often held and much preferred to the post of librarian. The Sun Disfigured, a scroll of anthropodon parchment written in the golden ink called Uzult. The author of the text calls herself the Elegabline. Sometimes she seems to be Sunset Celia, the Watchman's name. Sometimes she seems to be Lady Tryphon, the Grail Long. It is unclear whether these are separate entities or the same person. It may be unclear even to the writer. The flaws in the Sun's plan are elucidated. The Sun's plan itself is never entirely clear, but it is a project of some kind to enter, possess, or surrender to the glory, the pure light of above the Mansus. This book suggests ways in which that plan might fail. The Sun's weakness, the Sun's sins, and the Sun's scars are our salvation. There are histories where they will trap us, prevent us rising to eternity. Any librarian can use this to establish a history and complete the game, but the executioner can use it to win a particular victory. So here, we'll take the Arab, we'll add the Sun's weakness, we'll add Tradis Mahaira, and it shouldn't be a problem to read 26 Enticement, 7 Torments now. I can master this mystery, enough Grail to match Mystery Grail. And while I'm at it, let's look at the plant. I think I can use a Fet in this case. Investigate the object. You won't use this up or consume it by doing this. Nope. And help with letters, an afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is winter and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire in the sweet bones with a beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? Alright, so our exploration on Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic Volume 2. All right, Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, 2nd edition, or I like this one a lot, by the way. So, Towards a Fundamental Aesthetic, 2nd edition, or The Refinements of Light. Julian Cosley had never wanted or expected to write a 2nd edition of his masterwork. Julian Cosley long regarded Solomon Huscher as a charlatan, but his friend Nina Lagasse painted 3 paintings before her death in 1895, and these paintings apparently convinced Cosley to change his mind. With considerable irritation, he revised his magnum opus. The perfect hegemony of the hours is perhaps eternal. Cosley had always championed history rather than eternity, the exceptions, limitations, contradictions of freedom, but Huscher's and Lagasse's work convinced him to believe in the paradox of the eternal ending, a means in which perfection might be reconciled with freedom. He's not happy about it. This is perhaps the angriest book ever written in support of a peaceful philosophy of acceptance, but Cosley always was scrupulous about his conclusions. Newman, A Final Understanding. Eternity and history cannot be reconciled. Freedom cannot be perfection, not unless we understand the paradox of the eternal ending, and only in certain histories is that paradox possible. Any librarian can use this to establish a history and complete the game, but the magnate can use it to win a particular victory, which is, of course, the librarian I'm playing. I thought you might like that, but yeah. So there's now we know why Huscher spilled his tea. I'm assuming, anyway. Sorry, just give me 1 second here. I also think there's some significance behind the image on this one, but I'm not revealing that. Now, the fun part for you is you're going to have to figure out where you can get these. So I'm just taking some notes here. I'll be back in 1 second. A watchful potted plant, not everything needs eyes. A sense of awareness persists, but the plant remains immobile, unsettling but harmless. It doesn't even have thorns. Now, it seems to me like an easy option for the grail here would just be to drink some water. I should have a whole bunch of it running around, so... This is another one I like. I keep forgetting Peace in the Deep, but it's a nice one, especially when you have like a windy day. It's a really good song to have play on the soundtrack. Drink the stuff. This will consume the beverage. If it's a whole bottle, consider serving it first so you don't drink the whole thing. Okay, so we're not going to bother with any rooms until tomorrow. I mean, we probably could bring in the fishermen and there wouldn't be a problem, but I don't know. I don't really feel that big of a rush to move on that. What I do feel a little bit more of a rush for, though, is just to get my various skills leveled up, because that also means that I get to it's not just that I get to level up the skills, but it's that I get to commit some more stuff to the Tree of Wisdoms and also read some of the books that either I haven't seen before or I haven't seen in a while in the game. So Let's keep talking to Mr. Kill. I may also take a brief pause for some more tea. The water of the Isle has a very faint, very distinct taste, sometimes described as apple shroomy. Every sweet has its sour, Emerson. Trying to think if there's anything I want to do with the... Yes, there is. I can open up another container. So records box, or let's do that last. So we've got the abandoned luggage here. Crack open the container, delight in your discovery. Better now. Help with letters. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There's no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. Okay. So again, we'll keep going with Mr. Kill. Right now, I mean, one thing I probably should be doing a little bit more of is... oh, actually, here's one thing that I can do. So what I'm thinking of right now is we've got lots of elements of the soul. I'm clearly not going to be able to use all of them today. So perhaps what I want to do now is we have 26 enticements, 7 torments. So 40 seconds from now, we're going to have the lessons that I need to level up Leaves and Thorns. So what I should be doing now is I should actually be getting those lessons that I need. So we'll use the Whist. We'll go left to right now. So Intuitions doesn't help. Foresight, Storm, Stolen Secrets. Hindsight doesn't help. No Assault. Satisfaction does, though. I really like reading the Berry book. Alright, no regrets. We've already got the Gossip. Foresight doesn't help. Nothing from Contradictions. No Fears. Earth Signs we don't use. Storms we don't use. Savage Hymns we don't use. And I don't remember which of these we were working on, but I'm going to read the Kukerbit Prisoner Records 1927 for a completely inexplicable reason that absolutely nobody will ever understand at any point. Definitely not related to at least what I think is going on with the thing we'll open up tomorrow. Hang on. 1. Okay, so we got 4, 5, 6. I'm missing a 7. Well, technically the Earth sign would be a 7th. Is that the best I can do? I guess so. Not unless I want to start... Oh, excuse me. So actually, if that's true, I should probably start reading Wrapped in the King. So I may have to give up the Hive's Lament for the 8th. I think it's probably the easiest one for me to get back. Of course he does. All right. And we still have time for cooking, but I may want to consider getting ready for the spring salon. All right, Grail Birth. The 26 Enticements, 7 Torments. The painter, Niels Frederick Malsker, notoriously attempted a series of paintings based on the torments. By the 5th torment, the demands of the painting had grown so dire that he died of blood loss. The diagrams in this text are thankfully less detailed. The enticements of the Grail outnumber its torments, but its torments are its final nature. Birth is the first torment, and thirst the seventh. Through the enumeration of the Grail's enticements and torments winds the sorrowful history of the witches of the dry land, the ordeal of birth from two wombs, their struggle from and supplication of the Grail, the yearning for union which drives them all. Wanderer Down says, can you rest an element of the soul in the bird cage? It's a bed, but not a bed. Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't think so. I think you have to set up for the rest, but let's try it. Let's take a look. Oh, I wasn't expecting that to give us an impulse. Okay, so resurgences and emergences. I've got my impulse shelf here. So just for comparison, like when I take a look here, so we would have we'd have restore, and then we would have either a restorative or a beverage. I don't recall. Okay, so I think what we need here would be the restorative aspect, but I could be mistaken. For rest and recovery, something that will help you recover from... Nope, it's actually just for maladies. So I guess it's just the beverage then. Although I think every beverage would be a restorative. So the bird cage... Valentine de Wolf put his only friends in cages. Did he close the cage doors? So in this case it says restore, but we don't have... Well, we do have the beverage, the with. But yeah, so I think the thing here... Well, it does also say it has to be an element of the soul. So I guess the interesting thing here is it doesn't strictly say that you can't have the fatigued element of the soul, but it doesn't permit that stuff to be added anyway. I think it's because it's lacking the aspects. It's the only place that you can put the element of the soul would be places that require aspects. And so as a result, because you can't put the element of the soul in the slot, then you couldn't restore. Oh yeah, that's a good point actually. So I probably could have been feeding like Terrence and Tuppence and not using up my talk verb. I never tried that. Glinting cranial tchotchke. We all of us come to this condition in the end, but not all of us are fortunate enough to be lovingly buffed and fixed carefully to a stylish wooden stand. What room needs another skull? All right, so I think we're going to want to level up the leaves and thorns before too long. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is winter and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire in the sweet bones with a beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. And dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? Okay. The Berry Book. Thyrza Blake, 7th librarian of Hush House, talks about fruit, for no other apparent reason but that it was the kind of thing that she did. She talks about fruit in the woven language Kilisimi. Who was it that once said, "Fruit is the womb of a plant"? It was me. Take a few moments to think on that in ripened wisdom. I shall leave a blank space for your moments here in this page. Nectar, children mine, cast my words into a sufficiency of nectar, and watch the Pyrus persimmon burst from wood. Gather more nectar, wring it from the trees and the earth, and our persimmon gushes forth the sacrament. You will thank me. Yeah, okay, so it's not just the text of this, which is absolutely wonderful. But it's the fact that you, like, for me, and I admit, like, I didn't necessarily read every Thyrza Blake book, but I had a pretty good idea of the type of person who Thyrza Blake was by the time I got to her bust. And then I find out she looks like this, and I'm like, best librarian of the Curia. In fact, once I get some memories, I'll do the description. All right, but this particular one may interest you, Oswin, for reasons that will come up in a little bit. The Kukurbit Prisoner Records, 1927, accounts by Governor Collar's private secretary of interventions and experiments in the last years of the Kukurbit prison, focusing particularly on prisoners he believes might have Carapace Cross lineage. 2 prisoners suspected of oniric crimes are encouraged to access their inner Carapace Cross tendencies and develop the attributes of the Seglaz kind, sickle-formed pseudocrustacea. Regrettably, they lose the ability to breathe air. One dies, and Collars releases the other into the sea. Collars describes how he successfully induced an unstable carapace larva to develop into a greater form using insects and nectars techniques in the context of considerable moon aspect to awaken what would rather remain hidden. He hopes that similar techniques might be used to expedite the moral development of prisoners. All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the prisoner records. Governor Collars, the vastly underappreciated hero of Book of Hours. Okay, Leaves and Thorns, Beguiling Melody, Scent, Gossip, Taste, Satisfaction, Impulse, get the Earth sign in there, and we'll throw a little Arab at the problem. At last, I approach Mastery, improve the skill to level 8. And I think we just get straight back on the treadmill, so we will... Listen, do you want those things running around on the streets? I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. What else? I don't think... I keep forgetting if these... Yeah, they don't help. Red Book of Brittany. This time we will read the Gossip. Already getting the Earth signs. We'll get the Impulse. Rising Winds, Turning Stars. I will mention, by the way, for those of you who... what was it? So for those of you who already own Book of Hours, I think the Steam sale is still going on. Let me just double check that here. So, I mean, there's a number of different ways that you can access this. But yes, so there's currently a discount for Book of Hours. The base game is 35% off. The Anthology Edition, it looks like, is 41% off. So that one comes with Book of Hours House of Light, and the Book of Hours soundtrack. And then, of course, if you're just looking for the DLC, House of Light is 20% off. But the reason why I just highlight this, the best deal in terms of like the deepest discount is to get all of the is to get the Anthology bundle. But of course, that also means that you get the soundtrack with it along with it. So in this case here, if you really like the music, you can get the soundtrack with the Anthology Edition. And if you just want to get the soundtrack and you already own the game, obviously here with the DLC as well, it's also the biggest discount that you can get for the soundtrack. Because at least for this bundle, I know it doesn't work for every bundle. I have heard apparently some of this stuff is based on Steam's requirements for certain bundling options, but I don't actually know how true that is. But one way or another, you can basically fill in the stuff that you don't have for the deeper discount. I think the Anthology Edition at a base level is 15% off. But obviously the different parts of the bundle are at different discounts, so it gets a little more complicated there. But yeah, I figured that's not a bad one to highlight. Of course, I will mention we live in the age of streaming services, so I basically have all the Apple services. I just get their Apple One pack. So in that case, I get the I actually do own the soundtrack because I'm just that kind of guy. But yeah, I know on Apple Music you can get it. I believe it is also available on Spotify. But for those of you that already have a music subscription service, it is most likely that you actually can already listen to it on that. What was it? XKCD wrote, a normal man will be shocked when they pull a lever, but a scientist will exclaim, does it do this every time? I actually don't remember reading that one, but now I want to look it up. Okay, so I still need to drink some more water and also get the scent again. Wrapped in the King detailed accounts of secret bacchanals and ecstatic dances observed in necropolises and graveyards in southern Europe, in Egypt, and in Anatolia. The author is a self-confessed ghoul, an eater of buried flesh. He claims to have witnessed the dances while at his feasting. The dances draw from the traditions of the mysteries of the cults of Isis and of Sybil, but include both symbolic and literal flayings, and the human heart is always central in the rites. The author punctuates his accounts with queasily sensuous descriptions of his own interrupted feasts. At these greater feasts, a black pig is always crowned as king before its slaying. On this occasion, its heart was weighed in the balance against a knot of feathers, and its skin became a cape for the officiant. Its flesh was left for the crows, but I must confess my interest was not in its carcass, but in the perfumed flesh of the milliner laid fresh in the earth. Okay, hindsight. I'm not expecting anything special out of Mr. Kill, but that doesn't stop me from being able to do these interactions. The skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. So let's throw some more objects at my curiosity. Investigate the object. You won't use this up or consume it by doing this. I'm sure there are other places for me to get nectar. This is just the most convenient for me right now. I may not be able to do the Thyrza Blake investigation that I wanted to do today. We'll see. I do need to make sure I drink some of the water first. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? Did I actually pour any of the water, or did I just think about pouring the water? Certainly have no shortage of samples, so serve appropriately. Pour out. Poured out. Okay, we read this just recently, so I'm gonna move on with these. I will drink the water. Drink the stuff. The Wind's Ruin, the second volume of the Meditations of Abbot Thomas of the Abbey of the Black Dove. Abbot Thomas speaks of his time as a raider, when his name was not Thomas but Toke, scything the sea, striving for plunder. Abbot Thomas clearly regrets his storm years, and much of the book is taken up with his thoughts on penitence, but there are hints that he misses those years in the companionship of his sword brother, ship brother, Trygeave. Next up, The Red Book of Brittany, a volume of Inklore gifted to St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman conquest. The red flower lies heavy, but the roots of the watchman's tree are constant. The red flower is described as the temptation of suffering, but its suffering can apparently be allayed when the copper fruit is inspelled with a nectar aspect alongside herbs and infusions techniques. A variant of the same approach, with the inks of power techniques outlined here, can gentle Lethe into a great ink. Traveling at Night Volume 1, the annotated dream journals of Christopher Lopley, sometimes called the only readable occultist. Literate, entertaining, bewildering. The wood lies outside the walls of the Mansus. As any student of the histories knows, the Mansus has no walls. Lopley describes how he came to make repeated visits to a dream wood via what he calls silver dreams. Trying to think your way to the wood, he explains, is like thinking your way to being in love, but I did find a secret that helped. And the Kerishim Portalon, a beautifully illustrated and heavily annotated portalon, a nautical atlas of ports and destinations. It quickly becomes clear that many of its destinations no longer exist or never existed in the traditional sense, but the annotations remain fascinating. The routes to Noon, the long sanctuary across the Western Sea, may remain viable. 2 pages have been gummed together. When teased apart, they reveal a route to Ys Behind the Wave, marked in red and gold inks with heavily underlined warnings. Here the final city, strike the hours, lest earth and sky break open. Alright, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5 with the scent. We'll have 6 with the taste, 7 with the earth sign, but we need 8. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to give up the Hive's Lament, but let's just double check. Looks like it. Okay. These things do exist to be used, so... So one thing I can do right now, I know it's going to take 30 seconds for the drink, so I can get the replacement right away. The harder one is the drums and dances for the Hive's Lament. For that one, I think I can add... Well, I guess if we add the core... No, it does have to... It's nectar that I want, so... Yeah, so I really just need 1 nectar, but that's the thing. I don't have 1 nectar. I have everything but. Although... Nah, I need an instrument. I was thinking that... I'm very curious if I could do something spectacularly... Oh... This is amazingly stupid if I could get away with this. Clearly the designer's intent when producing the Hive's Lament was that you take your health, the drums and dances, the Mazarine fife, and the bronze knife to produce the Hive's Lament. I don't suppose any of you have seen the modern adaptation, I'm thinking of the one starring Gary Oldman of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. The water of the Isle has a very faint, very distinctive taste that's sometimes described as apple shroomy. The only reason I say the thing that I'm imagining right now is there's this, it's a really, really well done scene. So there is a scene in which Benedict Cumberbatch has to break into, I'm pretty sure it's MI5's like headquarters. Or sorry, he doesn't break in, he walks into MI5. Headquarters, but he needs to steal something. And obviously this is a terrible idea. You know, like you are in a world of hurt if you are caught. And Smiley is already under suspicion, I think, by the people that they're interested in. And ultimately it's going to be Cumberbatch's character who suffers the consequences if he's caught stealing this item. And the plot that they sort of have in place, he's going to get his thing. You have to go through sort of the security check and things like that. And what he's going to do is he's going to get a call for his car in the shop or something like that. And that's going to give him an excuse to sort of get the phone. It takes place during the Cold War, so everything's a landline, right? But that's going to give him sort of a reason to go in and ask, oh, hey, can you give me my bag? And, he'll be able to sort of switch out an object. But of course, they want some pretext, right? They don't want to just call in and, not be able to have a plausible cover. So what they do is they get a couple of people in the background to sort of turn on a radio, and they'll just kind of make some mechanic noises and such, and basically lend some credibility to the story. But the song that they have on the background is a very catchy song by George. I think it's George Formby. Mr. Wu's a window cleaner now. And again, it plays for quite a long time in the sequence. And again, it's catchy because you can hear it, but even like the people playing the mechanics in that are getting to a point where they're sort of drumming the different tools on the table and such. So that's kind of what I'm imagining when it comes to the drums and dances with the knife and the Mazarine fife. I'm just kind of banging away at the tool bench here. But the big reason why I'm actually I like highlighting that scene, if you've ever wanted to just kind of look at movies a little bit deeper and understand how they work, one of the things that's great about this scene is that Kieran Hinds plays. So if you ever watched, this is an older one, but HBO's series Rome, he plays Caesar in that, and then he also played, I think it was Mance Rayder in Game of Thrones. I quite like him as an actor, but he plays one of the people that George Smiley is investigating in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And what happens at the end of that sequence, right? So, you have the whole thing. Cumberbatch is able to fulfill the mission. He's able to steal the item. But after the call, just as he's about to leave, the Kieran Hinds character walks by and he's humming Mr. Wu's a window cleaner now. It's a beautiful little revelation. There's absolutely no sequence where you see the bad guys or the potential bad guys like listening in on the phone. But because they chose a really catchy song to play all throughout that sequence, all you need to do is just have a good actor walk by humming that song, and it tells you everything you need to know. And that ideally is what any movie should be doing in sequences like that. It's not. I mean, you'll have stuff like, one of my movie heresies. I didn't care that much for Goodfellas. And one of the things that I always bug me a lot about is I just think there's too much voiceover. I think that actually can be said for a few other movies like that. For some reason, I'm particularly irritated by Goodfellas for some reason. But yeah, you'll see in a number of different films, usually you will have something that's very either on the nose or there'll be narration to tell you what's going on or something like that. And I think maybe just because of its rarity, but I always like it when there are sequences like the one that I just described, because they are a bit closer to, why you go watch a movie rather than read the book. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is a perfectly good book, which is still available where fine bookstores are sold. You can actually probably get it very cheap at a used bookstore. So, I don't know, like, I sometimes wonder why... I guess if they're gonna do that, right? If that sequence were to do things the way that other conventional movies do it, then to me that would invite the question, like, why don't I just go read this perfectly enjoyable book? But again, because it was made by a team that sort of has a good idea in terms of what they're doing, right? They're making an adaptation. They're not just turning pages into a motion picture. They're transposing it. I thought it was good. Yeah, for some reason I thought that you'd seen it, Osmond. Did you by any chance see the BBC original with Alec Guinness? I say original. The book was the original, but yeah, you must know. Okay, yes, I'm glad I'm not losing my marbles. Okay. Yeah, the BBC one's not bad, but it definitely, the craftsmanship, I feel, of the modern one is definitely, it uses more of the film techniques to tell the story more convincingly, in my opinion. Okay, I don't have too many options. I mean, I lost the thing that I wanted to hold on to the most. Let's think about the next step. So Memory Storm would help me with the purifications and exaltations if I want to go with that. So I think that's what I'll lock it in. So I've actually heard that one complaint of that film is that it relies too much on people being familiar with the story. And I'm unfortunately not in a position to make that judgment because I already knew the story when I watched it. But it would not be... That wouldn't surprise me, let's say. I actually don't know if you know much about the author behind it, John le Carré, but I believe he actually worked for British intelligence and was outed by a pretty famous double agent, Kim Philby. So some of what is described in that is a that is like an actual obviously fictionalized, but that is sort of a kind of a situation that he needed to go through, at least as sort of being clearly he wasn't like in a hostile country. He would have been executed if he was, but yeah, as an agent, he was one of the people who had been identified by a pretty significant double agent. I think another one who's an interesting, I'm actually finally just starting to realize that like basically everybody who's ever written a story that I like apparently just worked for British intelligence at some point in their life. Although amusingly enough, apparently Mick Herron? Let me just double check this. Apparently the guy who wrote Slow Horses, or I guess it's Slough House is what it's called, he hasn't worked for MI5. Let me just see. Mick Herron. So for him, apparently he has not worked. Yes, yeah, I like that show a lot. But yeah, so apparently Graham Greene also worked for British intelligence at some point, and I definitely liked The Quiet American. So actually, I had a pretty good adaptation too. I liked so. When I went to university, like there were some courses, like I would have taken English no matter what, but the types of English courses I would have taken would have been different based on what my choices were compared to what. So like, it doesn't matter what you are doing. If you are a first year in an arts program, and where I went, economics was in arts, not in sciences. You're going to have to do some form of first year English course, which is all about like essay writing and persuading people of, a certain state of the world and bringing evidence and citations and such. But I will credit the professor that did that course actually. So they had their sort of specialty that they were interested in, but they really made an effort to make it interesting for us. In fact, he sort of made sure they had sort of at the back end of the course something a little more unconventional to study. So he actually used, I'd read this comic before. It's one of the few that I've read, but he did the series called Promethea by Alan Moore, which I really like that series. It's quite a good one. I actually first read it in the library, of all places. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that he did that series, because it was just one of those things where I sort of thought I was the only one that had read it, but he went for that. But for him, he was really interested in doing sort of international stories. I think that was sort of what his own particular interest was, just academically. So we did... I guess one was Slaughterhouse-5. I'm not sure if that one tied into the... I'm not sure if that one tied into the theme or not. But anyways, I was actually the first time I read Slaughterhouse-5. That was great. Or no, actually, you know what? I think I had 2 courses with him. And that probably makes more sense. But anyway, so with this guy, I did Slaughterhouse-5. I did 1984, which I was already familiar with. We did The Year of Living Dangerously. That was the first that I'd seen that one. But that one also has a film adaptation. That was one of Mel Gibson's earlier movies, and it had Sigourney Weaver in it as well. Quite like the book. The movie, I didn't mind the movie either, but like I definitely found the book quite memorable. And oddly enough, I actually wound up doing... I don't think it was Sukarno, I think it was Suharto, but I actually wound up touching on that region in economics a few years later in sort of my upper level stuff, which is kind of interesting. What else? We did The Quiet American, and that's where I saw the adaptation starring Michael Caine and Brendan Fraser. I thought that one was a pretty good adaptation. But again, I like the book. Actually, I lent the book to someone. I never got it back, so I bought a second one, which interestingly enough has the promotional material for the movie on the cover. So there you have it. But yeah, and then we did one, it was a Canadian one called Cambodia, or a book for people who find television too slow. I think it was by a guy named Brian Fawcett. And as the subtitle might suggest to you, what was actually really interesting was that the prof was pretty clear that he was not assigning it because he agreed with it. He was assigning it because he wanted to see how we engaged with it, especially because it has an unconventional structure. I thought Fawcett's arguments were very frustrating. I tried to be as nice as I could in my criticism while also being really clear that I thought he was writing a bunch of nonsense. And that was apparently exactly what the intention was behind it. So I passed the test. I actually thought it was a reasonably interesting idea to sort of assign something like that. Like, I don't think it's wrong to assign stuff that you disagree with, but I think it's interesting to put something in a situation where students may, like, where you're not necessarily just automatically agreeing with what the prof wants you to. Because when I went to the place I graduated from, like the harder to get into university, I definitely had an English instructor who was pretty, like, they didn't come out and say it, but if you looked at your grades, if you had a different opinion than him on, say, Vancouver housing prices, you would pay. And I've definitely not gotten over that. Anyways, I'm enjoying some reminiscence. I think I was actually mostly annoyed that I had to do that English class again because I thought I'd already done my time on essay writing courses, but the higher level university did not agree. Anyways, I'm going to get a little bit of tea in a bit, but I want to read these books. I'll try and keep it short because I did want to show the follow-up to that exciting book that everybody loved. Your school made you read the Bible. That's interesting. I didn't have to do the Bible in the English classes that I did, although in the Norton reader I have, they definitely include some of the King James in it. But I believe we did a little bit of the King James Bible in grade 11 or 12 literature. I'm trying to remember which one. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say, like, for me at least, given the type of literature that I like, a lot of the literature that I enjoy does actually take as given that people are familiar with the Bible, which is clearly not something that you can rely on today. So, you know, if you're going to read Paradise Lost, and in the opening lines, it's saying that the purpose of that work is to explain the works of God to man. You know, if you don't have that common understanding of a somewhat conventional view of Christianity around Milton's time, right, around the Commonwealth and the Restoration, then, you know, you're probably not going to get as much out of it. And then you'd have, but I mean, I'll also go so far as to say this is true for a lot of different works, right? So I also happen to think that you can get a lot more out of Shakespeare if you've read, Metamorphoses. There's stories from that, from Ovid, that are pulled straight out of Metamorphoses that are in the plays. So in general, the whole idea is that if you want to get the most out of reading, read a lot. And it's certainly no hardship for me to pull out Ovid every once in a while. And some other guy, Scribblerus, is like related to Taylor Swift or something. Duratio Quercum. The English title translates roughly as The Account of the Oaks, but this is Nathaniel Darcy Evers' fascinating, if haphazard, survey of the occult properties of every tree he can find, not just oaks. In Persia, Taxus Picata, the yew is called Sorkdar, which is the red tree. There they had long understood the Grail root. In later times, the great king of Pontus had beehives set in the branches of the oldest of the female trees. The berries of the Pontine yew open the door to death, but the honey of their flowers opens a different door entirely. This was not the great king's Mithridate, but one who has suckled at the great yew fears poison no longer. Perhaps they should. Nathaniel is here distracted, however, by the toxic properties of certain inks. He does mention more usefully that the minor ink of power Ugol can be brewed through the rites of the roots with the assistance of the aspect nectar. So this is just replacing some of the stuff that I lost before. Alright, the skill is now level 9. Its power aspects have also increased. Leaves and thorns, there is no scent without sorrow. Now, if you'll just give me a second here, I want to make a note, because obviously that particular skill can't go any higher. So that should finish off my bird song line. In fact, we'll actually also finish off preservation with Edicts Inviolable. And Hushery is also one that we're finished. So yeah, we're getting close to filling out all of our branches, which is good. Okay. I'm sorry to delay the opening of this, but I am going to take a few minutes to get my tea. So for those of you who've been here since the start, or maybe just some of you who have been, maybe if you've just arrived and want to get something to drink. I don't know what it is. One way or another, though. I'm going to take a small break. I hope you either get up, have a stretch, get a drink yourself. I'll try not to take too long, but I do just want to get myself back on track for the last little bit of the stream. Be back as soon as I can, but until then, enjoy some commercials. Got to pay the rent. Delude Daybreak, it's wonderful to see you. I hope I wasn't gone too long from your message. It's wonderful to see you again. I hope you are doing well. I've not seen you online, but I know you said you were going to be taking a bit of a break from streaming. I'm sure you've noticed that Rift of the Necrodancer now has a release date. I believe it's coming out in February. But for those of you who don't know Delude Daybreak, I've had a lot of fun watching Delude stream. I believe Delude stopped by when I was streaming the demo for Rift of the Necrodancer. Research and embroidery, excellent, good. Research and embroidery sounds like a good opportunity to do weaving and knot working. Valentine DeWolf. Also, potentially stitching and binding. Anyways, Delude's a lot of fun to watch. Definitely somebody who I found originally through Rift of the Necrodancer, or rather found me, and then I found out that they were a broadcast, or sorry, I think you hosted me, so I knew you were a broadcaster. Excuse me. But not just the wonderful Brace Yourself games, but I also got to watch some Morrowind, and were you doing Oblivion, or did I imagine that? No, you totally did the Shivering Isles. And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Research and Embroidery is because Delude plans to do a Sheogorath cosplay. Or possibly that may be past tense. But I will allow you to correct any of the falsehoods that I just let creep out as to your content. Anyways, just like Oswin Meow, somebody who I would encourage you to check out because it's somebody who I enjoy hanging out with. You love Oblivion. Actually, you've been experimenting with some boundary skips in Shivering Isles. Oh. I still remember, like, I know some people say that Oblivion is one of the weaker entries. I don't actually agree. Some people have said that it's too bland, and I'm like, personally, I don't see that, but I know that is a widely felt, or at least widely expressed, maybe, not necessarily widely felt, but I still remember that moment when you go to the Shivering Isles in the DLC, and that is one of the most memorable moments for me from the Elder Scrolls series, so I don't know, I'm not entirely sure I can bring myself on board with that feeling. And you have completed the first iteration of your Sheogorath costume, but you have so much more to do. Well, I know we're all looking forward to seeing, well, actually really any stage of the, or any iterations, but I'm sure you killed it. Oblivion definitely isn't for everyone, but you love the experimental nature of the game's design elements. Yeah, I mean, so the one thing I will say, it may be that because I played from Arena up to Oblivion. I haven't done a run as Caius. Ooh, sorry, wasn't quite there. But some of you will know that I've done my long playthroughs of the Elder Scrolls games as the same character through each of them. Sorry, wanted to get some refreshment. But I can remember the earlier games, you could do stuff like make walls vanish and appear and fly and, like just crazy stuff that clearly maybe in a modern RPG where you really put a lot of work into that. I can imagine that being pulled off. But once you start getting into Morrowind, you very clearly see this trade-off in terms of being able to realize the world in this very interesting 3D way. But that comes at the cost of not giving you the same degree of freedom that the other games, the earlier games did. And I actually think that the trade-off isn't a bad one. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who say that Morrowind is a bad entry in the Elder Scrolls. So Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, like, there was enough in Oblivion that was really interesting to keep me on board, and then whatever was quote unquote missing was something that to me just didn't seem as dramatic of a, for lack of a better term, downgrade as moving from the earlier ones. I will confess my one heretical opinion about the series is Daggerfall, where like I really liked the idea of Daggerfall and I really liked its ambition, but that was very hard for me to get through by the end. Like I wanted to like that game a lot more than I did, but I was a lot more excited about the potential of Daggerfall than the realization of it at the end. And I felt that was a bit of a shame because I felt like there was something really potentially interesting there, but ultimately the delivery wasn't quite where I wanted it. But I'm not unhappy that I did it. I think it I'm happy that I did it once. I'm just not sure I'd return to it. All right, The Hive's Lament, a song of pragmatic sorrow. Memories fade, assistance departs, but the soul is refreshed. All right. So let's do a couple things. So first of all, I didn't promise, but I did want to investigate the bust for Thirza Blake. Investigate this object. This is just so that I can give the in-game description of the author of the Berry book. Next up, I believe I said I was going to level up Purifications and Exaltations, and that would mean that I read The Chandler's Wish. So that is going to require 12 lantern. We can do that at the Pale Desk. I think Edict... no. Oh, hang on. I don't think I have a very good... Disciplines of the Scar is my best. Alright, I need 12. The Final Understanding is definitely not going to cut it. I could take my chances with the draws, but I think in this case I'll just read a book that'll give me a revelation, let's say. So we did Sunrise Awakenings. Actually, I think we've done all of these. But I'm going to read Prophecies of Glory. I think Ambrosial is Impulse. All right, I've mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. Okay, so our goal is to open up the Menacing Phosphorescence. So let's hire a fisherman. Assistance from a fisherman. In winter, when the storms close the seas, the fishermen will offer their services for $1 a day. Fishermen will offer moon and a little sky, alternatively add a soul card to find rarer guests who might be seeking employment. Now, I don't exactly have a game plan for the fisherman here. I'm just kind of running with it, so... And we have snow for today. The world is pale today. The white is west of the world, and winter does not wait forever, Solomon Husher once said. Fishermen's assistants. Fishermen in this part of the world have a reputation as smugglers and worse than smugglers, but those days are past. Mostly, those days are past mostly, and mostly they just catch pilchards now. They still remember the words spoken in silence to the moon and the sea. Okay, so we've got... I'm going to sketch this out just to make sure that I'm not completely losing it. So our best option would be to use the Wormwood Dream. So we've got Fisherman with 2 moon to start with. So Wormwood Dream is good for 6. Tryst is good for 1. So 8 to 9. Lunar Globe will bring us up to 10. So then we're missing the 4. So that's got to come from food and drink. Now that's not too difficult because we know that any of the fish will give us moon. So we should have some on the bridge still. Do I really have 2 snakes? Wow. All right then. Yeah, so we got some pilchards right here. So I think that's it, because at the very least, I suppose I can take a look at the T's here. I don't think these have moon. But if I'm not mistaken, the Armagnac d'Y should give us... Yeah. Okay, so let's get to work. I'm going to give the fisherman the Wormwood Dream right away, and that's just because it gives me more time to recover it. So Exalt with a memory, I can discuss a memory with my assistant. This will use up the memory, but boost the assistant's abilities for the rest of the day. We will restore the Wormwood Dream right away. So we just need any old memory for that. So recall a forgotten crime of moon and winter. Edicts Martial with scholar level moon plus a memory creates a Wormwood Dream. Should probably make the Forbidden Epic at some point, but we'll take care of that later. Let's get the drinks ready to go so we can serve up the Armagnac. Poured out. Armagnac can only come from Gascony, but if you believe Monsieur Corentin, his vineyard began with vine cuttings from yeas beyond the sea. And we will read the book, but we need to get the lantern first. We're also near the end of the day, so I don't think it would be a bad idea for me to think a little bit about a guest list and do some cooking. But that's not an urgent need. I think I'll take care of leveling up what I need first. All right, the description of Thyrza Blake. This bust is carved from malachite. Thyrza Blake, 7th librarian, mistress of wood lore, squanderer of fortunes, giver of no dams whatsoever. I can only aspire to such a description in my own life. I know you're already sold on the game, Oswin, but really this is just an extended propaganda campaign to make you excited about Book of Hours. Alright. Memories don't last long outside books, but it's made a difference for the day. Secret sorrows may join our strengths, boost Moth and Moon. Actually, one thing I do like about the description of Christopher Olopoli is they call him a ruiner of seances at some point. Yeah, here we go. Olopoli's Nook. Christopher Olopoli, poet, painter, archivist, ruiner of seances, stayed on for a while at Hush House after the Great War. The librarian, Serena Blackwood, arranged rooms for Olopoli in the Motley Tower, ostensibly so he could help with the collection, but perhaps also because she saw a potential ally against the governor of the Cucurbit. Relations between the Cucurbit and the house were badly strained at the time. So I actually don't know the story behind Ruiner of Seances, but I sure want to know. Prophecies of Glory, religious and patriotic fables collected or composed by William Gore. This is much more sober in tone than Gore's previous Wainscot histories. Evidently, he became religious in his later years. Each fable describes the coming of the second dawn, when the hours of the sun will be united, but in Eternity Denied, the Vampire Light and the Feast of Rays, Gore depicts a tainted dawn, which can only be purified by a second division of the sun. He insists repeatedly on the dangers and temptations of a false dawn. So the plan behind that was so that I can read the Chandler's Wish. I can master this mystery. I haven't even been earning money, I don't think. Fixing and mending. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 worth of odd jobs. What comes, neither of us knows yet, but we will. So let's add the lunar globe. I can lend my assistants something to help, increasing their abilities. So we're up to 10 now. From there, we'll just need the drink and the... Excuse me, the drink and the fish. I haven't pet the cat once. Well, technically I can't pet the cat. I can talk to the cat. This is the closest I get to petting cats. Oh, you were hoping to work on that desk. How you doing, Mel Mel? I didn't think I'd catch you this late. What have you missed? So I've been pretty bad at starting on time, so I do tend to stream a bit later to make up the time. But we've unlocked the rest of the Kukurbit, so this is fully open. And we did just unlock the sea caves, but we're on our way to opening the menacing phosphorescence. And honestly, one of the reasons why I read the Kukurbit Prisoner Records 1927 is I think at least there's something related in that region down below, but I guess we'll find out. Okay, this tool has boosted their aspects appropriately, so I'm sure the fisherman is absolutely not tired of eating pilchards at this point, but where are we? I can offer my assistants something to eat. This will increase their aspect. It's also just friendly. And Couts, second of their name. How are you doing tonight? Perhaps you were summoned by the cat sounds. Let us hope it's equally possible to forget this again. If there are laws which apply only in Dream, then it must also be that there are crimes which can only be committed there. The cat's not there for work. The cat's there for looks. It's a mascot. Really, I think we already know who the 13th librarian's going to be. The sustenance has boosted their aspects appropriately. All right, one more. We will toss in the Armagnac a nice drop. I can offer my assistant something to drink. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. So I am going to earn my Elements of the Soul back just because I do want the money, but I may also wind up using these for a lot of memories and also trying to do some cooking, but... You have 8 turtles around your hush house, and it's hilarious. The living relic is actually my favorite. It was the last animal that I got. I think I'd even made the chrysalis open until I finally got a living relic. But as soon as I think I saw the concept art for it, and I was like, this is the one I want. It obviously is Lantern affiliated because of the eye on its shell. I want this turtle so much. I don't think I have a living relic in this. Or no, hang on. We got one, didn't we? I'm trying to remember which playthrough this is. No, apparently I do not yet have a living relic. We'll have to fix that. Okay, down to the Grussians. We've got our 14 for the Fisherman's Assistance. Again, the description: the menacing phosphorescence. The pumps have drained enough water to splash through, but everything is spatched and spotted with sickly, alien, wondrous, mesmeric light. When I retreat, I find the same glow on my boots. Whatever I do, I should not do it hastily. I don't know if it ever says how old they are. I'm guessing they're not that old, though. I should probably be generating my my memories at this point, so I think I said I was going to be... I want to just double check that I've got this right, because I know there are two that are very similar. So I was going to use it for purifications and exaltations. All right, so I really just need 3 for this first one. And we do need Sky and Lantern. Of course, I already have the Storm and the Sight. Actually, the Final Understanding will work as well, as silly as it is to... to use such a powerful memory. The Chandler's Wish, formula and instructions invoking Moth, Lantern, and exceptionally, paradoxically, the liminal and theoretical hour called the Chandler. The author is anonymous, admitting only that they are one who is not yet nameless. The author makes a passionate argument that the hour named Chandler is in fact the oldest, even though he does not exist, because he is supposedly the culminating event of a plan that precedes even Grail and Moth. Where the Chandler has passed, the understandings of the Colonel and the Lionsmith will wrench open truth. Where the Chandler will pass, Moth will pass before him. So, I don't want to speak too specifically about this, but for those of you, there's a hint here for finding a so there's one of I actually think that this is a particular clue that I really like, because I actually think it works in 2 ways. So one, if you have an idea about the Chandler, this can be a hint for finding one of the treasures of the house. But I think more likely you find that treasure of the house through another text. And instead, this particular passage here indicates to you, through the revelation of that treasure of the house, as to the nature of what is contained in that particular room. What was this book called again? This is called The Chandler's Wish. Yeah, so this is it. Like, I think this is actually very deliberately set up. We're going to run into a couple more of these in the next couple of rooms as well. There's a few texts that I very specifically avoided from reading. But I think, like, to me, I'm trying, because I've played this a few times, but I've obviously only done, like, there's just so many different permutations of the game, and there's so many different paths that you can go through. I'm still sort of discovering a few of these where I'm like, oh, this technically is a hint for the treasure of the house, but I think this is actually trying to tell me something else. But yeah, for the benefit of the reading again, so usually multiple readings tend to help anyway. So we've got The Chandler's Wish, formula and instructions invoking Moth, Lantern, and exceptionally, paradoxically, the liminal and theoretical hour called the Chandler. The author is anonymous, admitting only that they are one who is not yet nameless. The author makes a passionate argument that the hour named Chandler is in fact the oldest, even though he does not exist, because he is supposedly the culminating event of a plan that precedes even Grail and Moth. Quote, "Where the Chandler has passed, the understandings of the Colonel and the Lionsmith will wrench open truth. Where the Chandler will pass, Moth will pass before him." Okay, Inks of Revelation, Foresight. Let's shelve that properly. Where were you? Purifications and Exaltations. So Storm, Sight, Final Understanding, these are just the memories that I have available to me. The only thing we can use in this case is Faust, because it's both Lantern and... Or sorry, that's not true. I could use Whist as well because of the Lantern. But another fruit plucked from Knowledge's tree. Improve the skill to level 4. And because I didn't bring... Or rather, I used the hireling that I already brought in, I will generate some Lantern and Sky stuff. That is definitely not hard to do in this case. You did start a new run too, and was intended to taking slow so that I can roleplay what skills I get and what skills I put in the tree. Unfortunately, slow wasn't enough, so I'm already back in the end game again. I actually tend to find, so for my own feeling here, is I don't feel like Book of Hours really changed the pace. I definitely like thinking, so there's a few, I definitely, for these games, tend to give myself some challenges. So sometimes it'll be, don't commit anything to the Tree of Wisdom till I've opened the full house. That was the first playthrough to actually writing a history that I did. This one is a little more specific in terms of how I want to put the tree together. I tend to like having the different trials, although I feel that probably... To me, I can imagine the thing that would draw out my playthrough a little bit more would be the Salons. So I tend to play the seasons quite slow, and so of course, if you only get one, or not the Salons, sorry, the Lighthouse Institute rather, because in the end you want to inspire people for the Lighthouse Institute. And you can only do one of those events every season. It's just one of those cases where, you know, because I don't play the game quickly, things tend to be a little bit more plodding. But I also just happen to like sitting around Hush House, so it's not exactly a hardship for me to be able to take the long way around. Sorry, you all have to listen to me read Perugian Diaries again. And something at Natan's desk. You know, I don't always get to read the, Just trying to think if there's a section that I don't normally read that I might be able to take a chance with. I still love the fact that this is called the Big Blue Business. All right, let's do the Amalgam of the Red Rose. I like it. I mean, I always... So the one drawback with streaming is that often I'll run into people like, why aren't you using the special hirelings from the Sweet Bones? And it's like, because I don't want to. Of course, people get mad if you say that answer. So, but, you know, and if I don't commit anything to the Tree of Wisdoms, it's like, you can commit stuff to the Tree of Wisdoms, you know. It's like, I think it's like, I can be sitting with an entire window full of like high level skills. And it's like, I'm pretty sure if you can figure out how to get a skill to level 9, you know how to, you know, get an element of the soul. But yeah, it's just, you know, there's no winning, so I tend to find I tend to find it's fun. One of the challenge runs that I did was the librarian run, sort of in celebration of Book of Hours being released. So that one was, I wanted to try and do a complete Cultist Simulator run where I got every book. This was actually, it's funny because this was an idea I talked about with someone, I think like within the first year of the full release, like not the beta of Cultist Simulator. And then they announced Book of Hours, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, that actually fits really well. But like, there's only one book in Cultist Simulator that stays. So essentially, if you want to get the lore out of books, essentially you're relying on the ones that you can get twice. And I know they changed the game. So actually, the conception of the librarian run was based off of an old version of how the game was done. However, I believe there are ways that you can wind up with duplicate books if you're a little... if you're crafty about it. But yeah, no, it's a nice little way of getting a bit of extra mileage out of a game, I tend to find. And I think the biggest reward for me by far is that it forces me to think in a different way about the game. And I think particularly because the writing in this is so interesting and layered, it is very helpful to just look at the game in a different way. Just because, again, it keeps you flexible enough to be able to pick up on those little references that maybe are the ones that are intended to be picked up on, a fifth or sixth read, or after you've become a little more interested. Oh yeah, I haven't really played any mods in Cultist Simulator, but especially stuff that like for me, the challenge of the librarian run isn't so much like modding it would totally ruin the fun of that, right? It's more how do I navigate the game while how do I achieve the things that I want while getting all of the books, knowing that by imposing that restriction I'm forcing myself to a much more difficult challenge. I mean, the thing about Cultist Simulator, unlike the Exile, I guess Exile I kind of think of as Cultist Simulator 1.5, is that once you kind of know how Cultist works, you're not really in that much danger. Especially once they made Fleeting Reminiscences kill Fascination. I think it's pretty straightforward to play that game and not not die, right? The last big challenge I had was that there were a couple of runs where Fascination would do me in, and then they added the Fleeting Reminiscences, and at that point I don't think I've ever had an involuntary loss. But Exile will definitely give me a run for my money in some cases. But yeah, I mean, again, the big thing is just everybody can kind of do their own thing. You say Exile is in the same category with enough knowledge. Yeah, the funny thing about the Exile for me is that I always found that it was very good at killing you off early. So I've had a couple of times where I failed to launch. I was surprised on one stream that I did, or not stream, one video series that I did, because I've always tended to find like there's a point where I sort of hit escape velocity and I basically know I'm going to defeat the foe. But I actually wound up getting a little greedy and dying on that one, so I was a bit surprised. But yeah, definitely feel free to let me know what the challenge is. And for those of you who've been patiently waiting to see the result here, the Deep Light Caves. When the gods from stone were swept away, the Carapace Cross, who had served them, were swept away too. The Seglaz kind, the Wermifota kind, the Glaterflog kind, all those wise and mighty ones are gone, into nowhere, or hiding, or us. Here, in the fire-warmed waters, away from the justice of sunlight, their legacy quietly thrives. So, I definitely think this is the prisoner from the Kukrivit Prisoner Records, 1927. I could be wrong on this, but I don't know. It feels right. I got this little guy here. I like this little guy. There's, by the way, there's, so far as I can tell, no other evidence other than the fact that it references depositing the second prisoner into the sea. So, you know, there's plenty of stuff that can come from the sea. But yeah, no, it's like absolutely Oswin. Like this idea of something transforming into the carapace kind, and being deposited in the sea, and having the references to the carapace kinds here, I think goes through. I feel like this should be a community effort. Couts here says genuine randomizer for it, and the most recent one was limit total wealth to a max of 20, edge max level 12, no allies at all, 7 locations max. The foe is doubled with a combined HP of 20 wounds before dying. Were you fighting Antaios? Deep Lake Corals, where the wild few traffic with the tides. So we'll take Moon, Nectar, Rose, and Scale, and then in terms of additional material, also for those of you, actually I guess, sorry, Wanderer Down isn't here, but you got your Vosk evolution. But the last room that isn't a vault. This looks exciting. Some of you may remember this from the trailer. The pulsing darkness. If the isle had a heart, we would hear its pulse. And we're getting just ready for spring. I'm trying to think how I would get the big scale, because I haven't actually made a earthquake name yet. But I definitely think we can get 15 moth or 15 scale without that much trouble. So let's think about the rest of the day. I want to open up a records box. Treasure stored by a musician spy. What overlooked delight? Oh, you know what? I was probably a bit premature on that just because I do still want to level up the purifications and exaltations. I'm just trying to think. I am at the end of the day. I was originally going to work out some Salon plans. Obviously, I've got all the Arab and stuff like that, but I know if I sit down and think about the guest list right now, we're going to be here all night. So we'll leave that for later. The Geminiad Volume 3, a fragile manuscript illuminated with twin shapes of sad and luminous beauty with all the phases of the moon. It might be as old as the 7th century, but the language Fusine is much older. Coral decorates its cover, and its page edges are sharp enough to slash a throat. These pages outline the nature and doctrines of an hour that demands the union of what has been separated, an hour that is sought at the water's edge and beneath the moon. The Witch and Sister, the language is elusive, enigmatic, intricate. It'll take some untangling. The 3rd volume of the Geminiad reminds us that the Witch and Sister has been known to manifest as the sister and witch, and that this face may heal while the other face is always hungry. It implies connections between the Witch and Sister and the Hours of the Wood, especially the secret keeper called the Velvet, but it is ambiguous on whether the Witch and Sister is a wood hour proper, and it speaks at length about the sadness of the two who are one, the sadness that remains from their time as flesh. Book of Hours is what inspired you to try and work toward... I'm sorry, Malmal, I'm not familiar with MLIS. Oh, sorry, I'll look it up. I probably don't need to ask you. Oh, Master of Library and Information Science? Sorry, you probably mentioned this before, and I didn't register. I'm sorry. That's really cool. I actually talked about this game with some of the librarians at my old job, and they were intrigued. The Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Lopoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Lopoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good. Certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear the stream of eyes. We have agreed to part almost amicably." Lopoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of his journal is concerned with the studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of the old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. And the Amalgam of the Red Rose, which I guess we already overwrote, an account... Oh, actually, I think that leaves us one short then. The Amalgam of the Red Rose, an account by Mistress Redflower of the alchemical operations favored by the House of Lancaster, also identified with the Sunset Road. These operations ultimately led to their victory in the War of the Roads, but are described as now debased. The generals of the houses of Lancaster and York are described as brother enemies, a term more usually associated with the dyadic, invariably twinned Edgelong. The author's conclusion is that in the absence of the operations of the Dawn Road, the operations of Sunset inevitably became unbalanced, debased, and ultimately enfeebled. The combination of the two is described tantalizingly as the forge's true alloy. Okay, I think I'll just read the Alloy of the White Rose. Gotta be on theme. And clearly we've got more than enough in terms of elements of the soul, so I'll just keep earning the money. I do kind of like that House of Light gave us more things to do with the money, so being able to order in food for the salon is good. But as you can see, I'm still a hoarder, so the problem now is not the scarcity of funds, but rather the scarcity of Ooh, hello, Porphyryne. The Incastum Terminale of the Second History. It's the glowing crimson mauve of the secret histories. Porphyryne was venerated in secret by a confraternity of corresponding Cluniacs and Benedictines. Use an Incastum ink with your journal to make determinations and record histories. If the hours listen, the world changes. Porphyryne might also be used to compose a petition for the Labyrinth season, if you can provide at least 20 of Nock, Rose, or Moon, no Edge, Heart, or Winter at all, and a suitable writing material. Alright, I should be reading the book already, right? Yes. So again, I mean, this was definitely, I don't want to say it was a waste. It's good that we got what we wanted done, but I haven't put anything towards the next salon. Again, that's just me kind of admitting that we're going to be here all night if I try and do a seating plan, so I want to just get the evening done, particularly because I actually still have some writing to do, and I wanted to be in bed 2 hours ago. But we can at least finish off with Level Up. The Alloy of the White Rose, an account by Mistress Whiteflower of the alchemical techniques favored by the House of York, also identified with the Dawn Road. These techniques failed to bring them victory in the War of the Roads, but are not to be discounted. The author asserts proudly that the Dawn Road ends in the Second Dawn, and hints darkly that the downfall of the House of York was Grail sabotage. Mistress Whiteflower suggests a history of Uzalt, where the Second Dawn may come to pass. She identifies xanthotic essence as Uzalt's predecessor. She explains that without sufficient lantern, bitter black salts can be purified to xanthotic essence, and iotic essence can be exalted to xanthotic essence. I think that has more to do with the hours specifically being petitioned as opposed to the nature of Pneuma itself. That's kind of how I rationalize that for myself. Delude says, today I learned that another term for square is equilateral rectangle. That's actually the one I'm slightly more familiar with, but this may just have something says more about my textbooks than anything. And that of all geometric dice, the decahedron is the only one that does not have a regular form. You discovered this while reading about the Platonic. I was going to ask you, because I believe the choice for the shape of the D&D dice was specifically to model them after the Platonic solids. Obviously, not every RPG follows that convention. There's plenty that use D6 only, but I always thought, like, one of the appeals to me about Dungeons & Dragons, or Dungeons & D&D, as I want to call it on Twitch. One of the reasons why it was so mysterious and attractive was all the fun different dice shapes. I don't know if this would be worth going all the way through it, Delude, and I maybe somebody who's more familiar with this will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of the former best-selling books, Euclid's Elements, if I recall correctly, a proof that work works its way up to is actually proof about the Platonic solids, how they're, there's that limited number, and how that can it is necessarily the case that that's true. Now the thing is that while Euclid's Elements has been something that many mathematicians have studied and learned from for centuries, if not millennia, it's really hard to say that this is the best thing that you could be learning from, because obviously there's just been so much specific research into the teaching of mathematics, not even just mathematics itself, but specifically the best way to teach these things. I can only imagine that would be if you are sufficiently curious about that period of time. But with that in mind, I do not want to deny that people do find this stuff interesting, because there's a book, I think they might have even called it Sacred Geometry. Just give me a quick second. So it's called Sacred Mathematics, and it was sort of a series. I'm pretty sure they were Japanese. But there's sort of these geometry problems, and they're in some ways relatively straightforward. Like, the book is really interesting. It's a really nicely laid out book too. But what's interesting about it is not so much the individual problems that are presented, because in some of them you can solve them sort of with algebra very straightforwardly. But because they are geometry problems, the book does sort of encourage you to think of them in the context in which they were originally presented. And this can sometimes lead you... It's actually a little bit like how we were talking about the Chandler's Wish, and how you think about something a bit differently. Or maybe if you want to do a challenge run in a game, that you think about these things a bit differently. In that sense, running into those problems and looking at them from a certain perspective can actually give you a bit of a better understanding of the nature of the problem, and sometimes reveal new things. Sorry, I'm definitely going too far down the math angle. It just happens to be the angle in which I find it interesting. But that's actually really cool that you brought that up, Dalude, because that was what you are describing is actually one of the things that originally got me into D&D, and that particular curiosity was dormant for a while, and then when I wound up back in school, and specifically once I started looking at some of the math courses, and it wasn't even a particular love of math so much as a recognition that it was something I was going to need to get better at to do the subject that I studied. It did sort of that was sort of unleashed again, and I was able to sort of enjoy it in a sense that I maybe previously hadn't. So for what it's worth, those are a couple things that I found useful. By the way, for those of you who don't want to go seeking out those particular books, another good comparison to that experience would be, I think most people understand Pythagoras' theorem, right? When you have a right-angled triangle, a squared and b squared, which would be the two shorter sides, right? The opposite and adjacent, is equal to the square of the hypotenuse, which is usually denoted c square. And again, this is something that we understand algebraically, but the algebra we're familiar with, right? The analytic geometry that Descartes brought in, that wasn't what the Greeks used. There was a geometric proof, and to see a geometric proof of Pythagoras' theorem is kind of impressive. It's interesting to see how that gets worked out, because it's something we all learn. It's something that I think most people understand. Why on earth did I put Inks of Revelation there? I think most people understand it reasonably well as a concept and something that you rely on to sort of drag out certain ideas or certain other results. But in terms of proving it, like understanding why that is necessarily the case, and specifically to understanding it in the way that some of the earliest forms that proof took, again, it gives a certain insight that can sometimes be helpful. Okay, so satisfying to have come so far. It's kind of like if, I think, at least at my university, everybody had to do a first-year calculus course, sometimes more than just first-year calculus. But I definitely remember having to learn polar coordinates, and I'm like, this is stupid. Like, why can't you just count normal, right? Why can't we just have a good old-fashioned grid? You know, I got my X's and I got my Y's, and I'm happy. Why do you need to do this crazy circle nonsense? And and then I ran into why it is actually very helpful to be able to describe something as a radius and an angle. But you know, I guess that's just a university way of saying, when are we ever going to use this? But I think probably most mathematics departments will say, I hope you never have to use this. It's knowledge for its own sake. Yeah, I'm finally. I'm really happy to hear this, Dale. I'm actually really happy that you stopped by. I know Book of Hours is quite different from what I originally kind of connected with you with, but it's nice to catch up. I am probably going to have to wrap it up, though, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time reorganizing the skill list. Well, somebody's going to have to go to position 2, so... Okay, so we've got the 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6, and 8. And then Edicts Inviolable will eventually be a 9, so that's where its Yeah. I definitely get it now, but I remember at the time where it's like, are they just deliberately trying to make this difficult? um, this is one thing I sometimes have found a little difficult is that I always had, at least for me, the problems were a bit hit or miss in terms of whether or not they were motivated, I guess. I found, actually, this is especially true. So I don't always, so I'll think specifically in terms of applications of like data science or, so that one, right, lots of new estimators coming out. You're not always necessarily going to sort of grind out a proof for every single one of these. And sometimes you want to use them. But this could also be true for things like social network analysis, where you're dealing with different measures of centrality. I've always found that even if I do try to understand how, how a method is working, personally, one thing I've always found the most useful is if I can motivate a particular technique or estimator or, whatever this new thing is, if I can frame it as a way of solving a problem, that gives me at least some intuitions to sort of help me take the other half. So like a decent example of this, anybody who's done a basic statistics course, or maybe econometrics, you have this idea, right? You do your regression and your errors, I think it's the Gauss-Markov theorem. Basically, you assume that the errors are homoscedastic, sometimes called spherical. And the interesting thing about those ones are not necessarily that you can't trust the estimates that you get. So, like, they're not going to change the sign. In fact, the estimates that you get won't change if you violate that assumption. However, your errors are going to be wrong. And if you care about something like statistical significance, it is important that you correct for that. And so then, of course, that's where you get into heteroscedastically robust standard errors. In practice, if you're using a statistical program, you do something, reg yx and then comma r for robust. But being able to understand, right, is like, okay, so is this a problem in the first place? Am I just trying to get a number, right, for this model? Am I just trying to estimate some value, and I'm not trying to do some sort of hypothesis test to say that it is different from zero? If you don't care about the hypothesis test, you don't need to worry about the errors. And then, of course, there are other things, right? Maybe you know something about the nature of the error. And in that case, you can actually use different methods to get better estimators as opposed to the more standard and kind of general ones that people use. And, there's tons of textbooks on this stuff. Like this is not hard to find in terms of people describing how they work. But what I do tend to find is that once all the Greek letters start piling up and once you see equation after equation after equation, just being able to sort of find that bedrock, right? It's like, okay, so why am I doing all this stuff? Like, why am I doing this in the more complicated way? Again, because I'm trying to achieve X. Oh, okay. And I know that X can't work in this situation because, and in the end, I just tend to find this a little bit better for running through. But I'm going to have to leave you all on that note. I guess we'll talk about Jacobian matrices in the next stream, Daily Daybreak. It was a pleasure having all of you around here. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out, not hanging up. Let's try and find somebody to host. I'm going to just see if there's anybody running around. Okay, so I don't know who this is, but I do notice that there is the Aries network. Says it looks like it's a couple of people streaming. So I will leave you all in their hands. I feel I never want to start things off on the wrong foot for people, but I have had a couple of times where I've raided and it's wound up being, wow, I really am sorry I hosted these people. So raids are not always necessarily endorsements here, but what I definitely want to do is try and show some support to Book of Hours when I can. And that means if I have an opportunity to find a streamer that's covering Book of Hours, to be able to raid them. So I'm hoping you all have a good time. I'm actually going to have to run off pretty much right away. But I will be back on Wednesday, continuing on with this playthrough. And like I said, I don't think until... I think it's basically until the new year. I don't think there should be any planned departures for the stream, and I am still planning on doing a stream on Christmas. I don't expect you all to be there for Christmas, but for those of you that don't have anything else to do on Christmas, I'll be kicking around and hopefully we'll give you something to enjoy. Anyways, have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the Ares Network, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Until then, take care.